Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Titusville City Council meeting of July 10th, 2018 at 6:30. We have a quorum. I'll call this meeting to order. Is there anybody out there that would like to say the invocation? I see. Come on up.
Should I hear my name? I think I should.
Yes, sir.
Stan Johnston. I'd like everyone to bow their heads. Lord, we just ask for help tonight, and we ask for peace in this and harmony, and to work out some problems that we have. We ask for wisdom for the council members and the staff, city manager. Lord, just help us. And everyone says, Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If you'll stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item is approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes to approve. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of the regular city council meetings on May 22nd at 5:30 and May 22nd at 6:30.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, additions? I hear none. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Special recognitions and presentations, we have none at this time. Boards and commissions, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir. Agenda item 6A, accept the resignation of Municipal Code Enforcement Board alternate member Nina Upton for an unexpired term which will expire on 31 October 2020. There's one vacancy for an alternate member with a term to expire on 31 October 2020. There's currently no applications on file for council's consideration.
Okay, can I have a motion to accept the resignation?
I move to accept the resignation of Municipal Code Enforcement Board alternate member Nina Upton.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Historic Preservation Board.
Yes, sir. Accept the Historic Preservation Board semi-annual report as written.
Do I have a motion?
Okay. I'd move to accept the Historic Preservation Board semi-annual report as written.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Petitions and requests from the public present. Is there anybody that would like to speak at this point? Name and address, sir.
Yes, my name is Lois Ward. I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of Mr. Stephen Johnson, who resides down in River City. I have a handout with some exhibits I'd like to submit for the record.
Does this concern something on the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay. Wow. I think we need one for the city attorney.
Thanks.
Thank you. The first exhibit, cover pages that outline my presentation. The first page 2 is a aerial photograph of the property in question. It's located on Parker Drive in River City. It's on a dirt street, but it has city sewer, water. Sewer was put in 1993. Drainage facilities and road has historically been used with emergency vehicles and maintenance vehicles and access for adjoining residents. most all the streets in Indian River City were dirt when it was annexed in '64, and the city has, through various means, paved most of the streets, and this is one of them that hasn't been paved yet. Mr. Johnson, in December of, if you look on page 3, it's a summary of just the highlights. We've been trying to work with staff for over 6 months to resolve this thing. Mr. Johnson went to a building permit, and he was refused, his application was refused, and staff, for the reason that it was on, access was from an unpaved street. Mr. Johnson contacted me shortly thereafter, and I sent an email in January to planning staff asking the specific code, because I wasn't aware personally where a code required a paved street. I knew there were several houses in Titusville on dirt streets, but maybe one had been adopted recently, so I asked planning staff to give me a specific code, because if in fact the code exists, my advice to Mr. Johnson was to apply for variance, because I thought their special circumstances existed. So I won't go into the details due to time, but on Exhibit C is my email correspondence with staff, and the bottom line was I felt that it was non-responsive. It did not honor my request for a specific code. So we discussed it some more. I got some comments about definitions and whatnot, but none of them refer to a requirement for a paved roadway. So then in March, I wrote your city attorney, Mr. Broom, a letter and gave him some background information, and again asked for a specific code. I did not receive a specific code because I was intending to apply for variance. Instead, I was requested to attend a staff meeting, a meeting with Mr. Broom and Ms. Busaka, and at that meeting, I was advised.
Your time is up.
Got to have about 2 or 3 more minutes just to conclude this. I'm close.
2 or 3. Be specific.
2 if I don't stutter.
Okay, stop stuttering.
Can I do a motion for 3?
Thank you.
You can
Just
do
in
that.
case,
That's all right.
just in case.
That's okay.
So the motion
I have a
is
motion
for-
for 3. Do I have a second on that motion? A motion and second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Exhibit F is an email where I confirmed the meeting. I was told at that meeting that the staff would support a petition to vacate the right-of-way to allow him to create a flag lot and a variance for the size of the flag lot. So we proceed with that, filed the application, which part of the application is to get letters from all the utility providers. All of them had no objection with accepting your city Water Resources Department, who objected because there's sewer and water, as well as laterals that serve the lots that were platted back in 1925. Skipping on to page 11 is an affidavit, signed, notarized affidavit prepared by me. It gives my background and basically states everything staff has done was talk to Section 30 of the code, which refers to subdivision ordinance. In subdividing a property, we are not subdividing a property. The property is already platted. This parcel consists of 3 lots, 3 50-foot lots. It's 150 by 135 feet. It's an existing parcel on tax roll, and that's what we're requesting a building permit at this time. Due to the time, I'll skip over reading the affidavit in the record, but I want to make sure it's a part of the record. And in the attachments there is the applicable codes, which is in Chapter 28 of the code, zoning ordinance. The bottom line, in closing, I can't for the life of me figure out why we're having this much difficulty. There are other houses that exist on dirt roads. There's no code requirement otherwise. And my request is that you please direct staff to work with us and process the building permit. We'll comply with all codes on the books.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Busaka, could you come up, please? Are you familiar with this situation?
Yes, sir, I am.
Would you like to make some comments so we know where we might go with this?
The code requires that the parcel be located on a city street, which I don't have the definition in front of me, but the parcel that Mr. Ward is referring to is on a right-of-way, which is unimproved. There are utilities in that, but that is not the same as an improved street. And we have worked with Mr. Ward to try and accommodate them. They have a request in for variances, one variance, they may need more than that, and a request for a vacation of a portion of Parker.
And if they got those variances and the other part of it, would they be able to do it there?
Yes, they would create a flag lot, and the flag stem would front on a city-maintained road, street, as the code requires.
Mr. Broom, did you have something on this particular item that you would like to impart?
Not on the particular item, on the process. Of course, council can't direct the building permit to be issued. If the building official decides a permit is appropriate, he can certainly do that. If he decides that it is inconsistent with the code and he cannot issue a permit, the proper remedy is an appeal of his decision to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, not to council. So he certainly can appeal that decision of the building official. If he wants to obtain a variance to the code, in other words, in this case, if it's a variance to the section of the code that requires that a home be constructed on a public street, and the definition of street, whether it's improved and those requirements, he could certainly try and obtain a variance to have a home built on an unimproved right-of-way. Currently, he has stated, I believe he has a variance request in for the flag lot. But again, the process is Board of Adjustments and Appeals. If he is unhappy with the decision of the building official or unhappy with the code and he seeks a variance, but the BAA is the place for that, not council.
Okay. I have some lights on here. Member Diesel?
So, Ms. Busacca, is there you gave a couple thoughts about what they can do to make this work. Is there an understanding here at all? Because it doesn't seem to be an understanding of what to do to make this work.
Well, we've met with Mr. Ward several times, and the suggestions that the staff has made are not satisfactory to the applicant. The applicant does not want a flag lot. The applicant does not want to subdivide adjoining property to allow a flag stem or on that. The applicant wants to front the street that he thinks is the right-of-way that's sitting there. So we've talked about this for a number of times, and there are lots of ways to skin this cat. Part of what has happened is that during our original discussion, Mr. Ward talked about having one lot. Now Mr. Ward's client wants two lots, where we thought there was going to be one. So this has been a difficult process.
Would there be this issue if Parker was paved?
If it were paved to city standards and accepted, the answer is no. Now, before you ask, that's a very expensive option, because you would have to put in stormwater, and that because this is new. In the case of is Kevin back there shaking his head at me? Okay, good. In the case of a unpaved street that has been used for a number of years, the Water Management District considers that does not need stormwater because it's existing. In the case of Parker, which is basically just dirt and has not really had any sub-base or base put on it, then it would be considered a brand new road and would require stormwater permitting, would require a great deal of cost. It could easily be for the city, and I'm just going to guess, well over 500,000, maybe $1 million to do that piece of road.
So is it a code issue or a feasibility issue that has to be paved before they could build, or?
It's a code issue that it has to be on a city-maintained road. There are a few city-maintained roads, as you know, that are not paved. But basically, the code requires paved, and those have been grandfathered in, and the city is working diligently to get those unpaved roads paved.
And apparently, from what the city attorney just said, we're not the place to make that decision. But I would say that if this was me and I'm getting ready to build something, I would have never thought in a million years that it depended on if I was paved or not paved, and I wouldn't think that was my responsibility to pave a road. I would think that's the city's responsibility. And if they don't want to pave it, that's fine, but don't tell me I can't build there because it's not paved. Am I close?
Well, the subdivision, typically, I'm sure when you bought your property, the developer paved the road.
Right.
And you paid for that as part of the cost of the lot. I promise you did. So what's happened here is that in this case, for whatever reason, and this is a very old lot, that it was not paved by the developer. And now you're asking the city, all the people in the city, to do something that typically a private developer does and the property owner pays for as part of the value of the lot.
Or just let them build without paving it.
Yes, sir. But this is a case where, if you're familiar with Sun Valley,
Right.
also has rights of way. People come in and ask us all the time, may I build there? There is no way to have access, and it is very challenging to say, I have this right of way, which looks significantly different than that right of way. So we have to think about, this is not just a single issue once this decision is made. This could impact many homes, and we're talking getting appropriate fire, police, emergency services, all those things. Now in Parker, it has been used as an informal road, and it may hold up when it rains. I don't know. But so many streets within the city, I shouldn't say streets, so many right-of-ways that are unimproved, I can't say that's true.
I think I read that emergency vehicles do use that road. So that seems to be maybe a non-issue. I would like to see, again, it doesn't look like we make this decision, but I would like to see a situation like that. This house is probably 1960s, maybe, I don't know. But I'd like to see something like that grandfathered in and find an easy way through this. I'd just like to see it work.
May I rebut briefly?
At the end of it, sir, we have to let everybody talk. Vice Mayor?
So, and I think this might be just scope to council, would be my hope. One is where I see the crux of the issue is defined as public street, step one. And so from a staff perspective, I think you're dead on as far as what does the code say reflective of so on and so on. As long as there's something that says public street is defined as whatever, which I am sure that it does, and I'm sure if that has not been somewhere hard copied and handed, that would probably be very appreciated, which I would think so. But that definition of public street in contrast to right of way. But what I would strongly suggest is that this issue for you all be remanded to the Board of Adjustment Appeals. And the reason that I say that is when you look at the Board of Adjustment Appeals, number one, it's an independent decision of City Council. So just that decision is final unless you court with. And so they have the ability to case by case look at things. And one of the things that they look at is the unique features of the property. So whereas we are talking about code relevance to the entire city, the Board of Adjustment Appeals can look at those instances one way or the other, and they're an independent body that can evaluate and then make a ruling on that. And I believe that that's where it should go. I would be interested only because barring this is 1 out of 10 years, but if this is something because of development needs we're going to run into possibly more, I would be interested to know how many streets do we have that are currently, as an example, how many streets do we still have left that are unpaved? Because I know for about a decade, we were looking on just paved streets in Titusville, and we committed a substantial amount of funding and discipline to a pavement plan that far outseeded the entire county for the amount of paving that was done. So as an investment, my hope is that we can celebrate that as a win. But if there are, and to be clear, if the difference between streets that are unpaved in contrast to right-of-ways. So as an example, if the entire subdivision of Sun Valley is trying to use right-of-ways or whatever the case may be, because there's a definite distinction. And if we have a ton of things that are considered right-of-ways that have been used as streets, just out of use, then the amount of money that we're going to need to set aside to address the whole idea of paving Titusville to whatever extent we're trying to do, I want to make sure we have a clear picture of what we're actually looking at. Because if there are a substantial amount of properties that are using right-of-ways that are unpaved, not supported, but they're dirt, we may be looking at many more miles of paving in contrast to just what we're looking at right now. So that's the city function. And as far as this independent function, I think to staff's point is I don't believe we as a council, number one, we can't say go do that. It's not right. But the BAA would be totally appropriate. And I think because of the unique layout of the property, that it would be a valid address to them.
Member Nelson?
Okay, as a long time Titusville resident, Parker Street has always been unpaved and has always been a street. I mean, I'm talking about when I was like 8, 9 years old, that was a street. And it just seems unfair to these people to say, okay, buy this piece of property, I don't know when they bought it, but the last 50 years, I thought that was a street. And I'm sure everybody else thought it was a street. So if we have areas like that, then maybe we need to look at a different definition of what a public street is. And I don't know if that's not appropriate right now, but that may be something that we need to look at in the future, because I'm sure there are other areas that are unpaved where people have bought property maybe 50 years ago, thinking that was a street. And now we're saying, sorry, we decided that wasn't a street, and you're out of luck. And I don't think that's fair to them either. So I would say Vice Mayor's right, it needs to go to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. But at some point, if this is going to be a reoccurring problem, we need to address it.
Okay. Mr. Ward, let me tell you firstly that I've been on this council for 14 years. I've never seen anything under petitions and requests like this. You've asked for a rebuttal. I'm going to allow that, although it's very unusual for us to do that.
I'll be very brief, sir.
All right, sir.
First, let me say, if staff could give me a code, I'm fully aware of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals and their processes. I'm fully aware of the code. If staff would give me a code that says it has to be a paved street, I'll happily file a variance. If the building department would process the permit and deny it so I had a reason to appeal, I would do that. Our problem and our request is that you direct the building department through the city manager to process the permit, and we'll resolve any and all issues by the code. And if there's a code that's getting in the way, and I don't have the time, you won't allow me the time to go into all the detail of the unfairness of what has been gone and what has been happening, but I've requested a code, requested a code, requested a code. Staff does not give me a code. They keep talking about the subdivision ordinance. We are not subdividing property. We just want to build a house for Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, sir. Mr. City Manager, you've heard all of this, and you do have the prerogative of talking to staff about this. Would you do that, please, and see if there is...
Sure, I think we can provide whatever Mr. Ward's asking for.
So you're
We've done this several times. It's the only code we've got. I can't make up code. I can only give him what we've got.
Well, you can give him one of the two things that he's asked for. That's,
We've
if
given
you
him-
can't give him a code.
we've
you can
given
give
him the code.
But then you can give him the denial.
If he wants to process it, but that will cost the applicant money because they will have to make application fees. But if that's what they'd like to do, that would be fine.
Okay. You, yes, sir, you have to come up to the microphone, your name and address.
Hi, my name is Shannon Johnson. I'm the one that's trying to build a house here, and this is on my family land. My father's owned this land. Now, just to be clear, there's 3 parcels of land, and they're all physically connected. Okay, the lots that I'm wanting to build on, right on Parker Drive, has been in the family since 1984. However, the house that my parents live in currently and where I grew up, my father's owned since 1987. Next door is where my father's 64 years old, and he grew up in the house right next door at 3945 Alpine Lane. He's 64 years old, and he grew up in that house. So that house has been in the family since the 50s. Now, my dad watched all of these streets. When my dad was little and first lived in that house, that was the first house anywhere around. It was a house in the middle of the woods, and there was a little dirt road. Alpine Lane was just a single-lane dirt road all the way to 50. So he watched all the streets be put in the surrounding neighborhood. Parker Drive was put in at the same time as all the other streets. It was a well-defined dirt road, same as all the other streets. I remember all the streets in the neighborhood were dirt when I was a kid, and I remember when they paved them. And my father talked to a foreman one day, when they were paving the street out in front of the house. He was out there talking to them, and he asked them if they were going to be paving Parker, and they said not at that time because there were no homes on it. So there's a limited amount of funds, you know what I mean? They're not in the practice of paving streets that nobody lives on. But it was a well-defined dirt road, just like all the rest of them. It was graded just like all the rest of the streets, and even after all the rest of the streets were paved, the city continued to grade that road. I watched them grade it when I was a kid. I've lived there my entire life. My whole family's been there since the 50s. And so for somebody to tell me that it's not a city street when there's city water and sewage running underneath of it with 3 stub outs, clearly, for future, use. Now I got land that, family land that we can't use, that's unusable. And the city's only solution was to repurpose 25 feet from Alpine Lane, and create a flag lot, which means 25 feet. Now, I don't have the money to have a 500-foot paved driveway, which means that I would have a 500-foot dirt driveway right next to a perfectly good dirt street. So you're meaning to tell me that I can drive down a dirt driveway that butts up directly to a dirt street, but I can't drive on the dirt street? That just doesn't make any sense to me. And here's another problem with that. If we did that, there's like 300-foot pine trees that would have to be removed in order to create that dirt driveway, which is going to cost me even thousands of more dollars.
Sir, your time is up, and we have heard those arguments from Mr. Ward. It sounds like you have a very good argument, and the place to do that would be for Board of Adjustments and Appeals. If that's not the case, if City Manager would work with Ms. Busaka about getting the second choice up there, and then you can, if you want to go that, you had something in mind there, so you could go that route. But we can't do it for you here. That's an ordinance that has to be changed. If we wanted to change it, I'm not sure we would be willing to do that because it can affect everything around. But so we appreciate your coming. You make a good point, and you have had direction. I'm sure the City Manager and Ms. Busaka would be glad to go over it with you and hopefully give you the things you want there, or you need. Thank you. Next item, petitions and requests. One for the-
Well, I guess you can tell what I came to speak about. My name is Lisa McCotter. I live in Titusville. I'll begin with the end in mind. I need help. I need your help specifically, and I need your help generally. So specifically, you'll see back in March, I was here about the CUP for the event center, which you all graciously passed. And then we proceeded on the journey, which was the next step, getting the architect in, doing the drawing, and filing, getting a contractor, filing for permits. And that's where we ran into the problem. The problem is that we're trying to use an existing space without much change. And when we went to get our permit, the occupancy was bumped up to over 550. We, as you can see on the permit, we were thinking right around 300. At 300 occupancy, we can use the space just as it is with the bathrooms. When you bump the occupancy up, the bathrooms go up to 8. Then the project becomes, it's not cost effective. And beyond that, it's not what we wanted to use the space for. We don't want that occupancy. And so if you, and I'll just tell you here, we had many meetings with the city. And Mayor Johnson was in the most recent one. And we were given the suggestion of asking for the bathrooms that are there to be, I don't want to say permitted, but through the Board of Adjustment and Appeals to be acceptable and to allow us to, and at 300, that's fine. So that's what we've done. We've already filed for that, and I believe we'll be on the agenda at the end of the month. Then if you, and this is the problem that we're having. If you go ahead and flip past the CUP, you can see the drawing of the layout of the room. That's existing. We didn't add any of that. We didn't take anything away. We're trying to use it as it is. So you can see the existing bathrooms, and notice the small, well, the rooms that are smaller than the main room. Notice what that leaves. It leaves a horseshoe-shaped room with 2 very small rooms. That's actually a little third one that would be only for like an office, like an on-site manager. Then if you go to the next, that's a table layout of 200 tables and chairs. These are our actual tables and chairs that have been purchased. Seating 10. Look at the room. 500 people, that's 200 and it's full. Then if you go to the next, that's an actual picture of the property. Notice bottom right, that's the view from the other rooms. That square footage was included in order to come up with that capacity.
You need additional time?
I do, please.
How many minutes?
10? I'll settle for 3.
You're pushing it.
I know.
I do want to also talk as well, so.
You have to get separate 3.
3 minutes?
3, if please.
Do I have a motion?
Motion for 3 minutes.
Second.
Thank
A motion and
you.
a second.
So if you'll notice that
One
little,
second,
oh,
please.
sure.
I have a motion and a second.
I'm
All
sorry.
those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Now you can.
Thank you. So that opening in the small room, you can see that you're not going to put guests in there if you're having a wedding, a reception, any kind of function. That could be used in addition, say, I don't know, the bride to get dressed there, a silent auction room, a buffet room, but you're not going to put additional tables and chairs in there because honestly, it would be rude. It's just, no one's going to do it. So then if you flip over to the next page, you'll notice this is actually the from the building code. You'll notice the part in yellow. The part in yellow that I've underlined says that the building department has discretion, and it was within the realm of possibility that they did not have to stick with the table of, the square footage. There could be discretion there. And although we've asked for the discretion to be used to lower the number of occupancy, it was not. And that is the specific request, but the overall request is, the general request of where I need your help is, Searstown Mall is now Titusville Mall, and it's important to me. I might get a little teary-eyed, but this is not a job for me. It is a job, and I love it, but beyond that, this Searstown Mall, it's a part of our history too, every bit as much as downtown Titusville. It was built in '66. In February of '66 was the first unmanned test launch of Apollo. And by the end in October, Searstown Mall was open. If you will look at the lines of the mall itself, it's mid-century. If you come inside and look at the details, those mid-century details are still there. And we have someone who has come in to our community from California willing to invest in our community and honestly help us save a landmark. And what is hurtful to me as a citizen is that there are so many roadblocks. And I just wonder why the city can't come along and say yes if it's at all possible. Say why not instead of no. And that's really, we're going to need your help along the way. As you know, if it wasn't for this man, we would have another blighted area of vacancy of 95,000 square feet with Sears. We need your help.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm a little confused on this because I was at that last meeting and you had your contractors there, and I thought we had all of this settled out. And apparently something changed, which I'm not sure what it was, other than you don't like the number of...
The only thing that was settled out is that we were given the advice of why not go to the, the Board of Adjustment and Appeals and request that we be allowed to use the bathrooms that are currently on site. And
you agreed to that at the time, is what I'm saying. I mean, that's what you said okay to. You said, okay, everything's done, fine, and left. So this is a little bit different for me because I thought we had this all taken care of. But Mr. Wright would like to talk, I think.
Well,
so.
in answer to your question, that is what we are trying to do, and that's what we have been denied being able to do. And so we did take that advice, and we have filed, and we will be going towards the end of the month. We were on the agenda this month for that board.
So you were allowed to apply for that?
Yes, we got a denial. First, you have to get the denial from the city.
Oh.
And then, so the building department.
But it was part of the process that you were going through?
It's part of the process. May I also say that it's added another $700 on top of the CUP, which is like $1,800. This has not caused, I mean, this is a problem.
As I recall, and I'm not saying I'm expert at it, but as I recall, there's state laws involved too, and we don't have anything to do with that except to enforce them.
State laws, what do you mean? What are you referring to?
A certain amount of the spacing and so forth. I don't remember all the details, but I remember some of it had to do with state law.
Well, if you'll look at that page where I did the little yellow directly from the ordinance, where it does say that there can be leniency, there can be, there's leeway for the building department.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to speak now, sir? Oh, wait 1 second. We have one question.
Thank you. And this is for staff, if you can help me out with this. So what I see is, and just, so it's movable tables and chairs, which from the ordinance that is provided to me, or the code that's provided to me, seems like the one that was highlighted, which talks about areas without fixed seating. I'm presuming that that would be applicable to what we're talking about. Below that, she had highlighted an exception can be made for the calculation. So the calculation is defined by the code, which is city code or
The
state
Florida
code.
Building Code,
So of which we are obliged to abide by.
that's correct.
Do we have any additional restrictions to that code that waive that exception?
The building official is licensed, and he is the only person who can interpret that code.
Okay.
And he has done that.
Okay.
There are some, there's a fire code, which
Right.
we also adopt.
Right.
And he coordinates with the fire department. But in this case, it's my understanding that it is the building code that is the issue, and that's why the appeal has been made to the building code, to the building official's interpretation.
If let's say that the exception had been granted, and this is for recourse. So as an example, we say, great, it's for 300 or 200, whatever the number was that they state that they will maintain. We walk in Tuesday and all of a sudden there's 500 people. Is there recourse for that as a city?
You would have to ask the attorney.
So as an example, in good faith, we step forward, in good faith, they step forward. Let's pretend that they don't keep that good faith, and all of a sudden it's, everybody is, way over. Do we have recourse to address that through anything? Civil fine, follow-up?
Well, first of all, the building official is going to make his interpretation of what's appropriate. If within his discretion, he feels like there are guidelines or factors to put into place that would allow a lesser number of facilities or restrooms by limiting the occupant load with things that he feels are appropriate, within his discretion under the building code as a building official, and then we find out that that is not being adhered to, then yes, and I would go to the building official and we'd find out, is it pulling the BTR? I would have to look and see what remedies are available depending on what discretion he's exercising and what the building code allows. It could be a number of things. From shutting them down, we'd also have to look at fire and see if that's implicated. But again, as staff told you, this begins and ends with the building official's interpretation of this code as applied to that building. Mm-hmm. And BAA is the one who, if they're appealing his decision, is appropriate to handle that.
Mm-hmm. And just where I'm looking at is, number one, subject to the building code's interpretation. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. I mean, that it is what it is. But the balance that I'm looking at, to be fair, is if we have just from an investment to the community that is a substantial investment, if the rationale for the denial of the exception is based on prevention of hazard to the public at large, I get that that is a valid concern, but I also get that if you're going to pump a lot of money into an economic development project, that you would probably be adverse to that risk, right? So I'm not going to have my space shut down because of we are violating whatever. It just, to me, from a business, it doesn't make sense to say, well, we can squeeze 50 more in. And so I think that there's an equal amount of liability that everybody's going, we don't want to do that. So that would be my interpretation from why we would apply such an exception, but to be handled at someplace else, I get.
It would be a code enforcement issue, to answer your question. If it's a health safety issue, the city could decide if they want to get an injunction to prohibit that behavior from continuing. So it all depends on what's in place and what the violations are.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
I have another light. Member Diesel.
So we, the city, are the ones with the building official?
Yes, sir.
And you've not been able to talk to the building official?
Oh, many times.
Okay, so the building official and you have spoken, and the building official has not made the exception?
No, he won't budge. He wouldn't even at their first meeting when he was first or second, wouldn't even look at the table arrangement, which we feel like the table arrangement shows that 550 people is not appropriate. It's not an appropriate capacity for this space because of, well, you can see the way it's divided, the shape
I
of
would
it.
agree with you by the pictures. So really, if you're trying, what's the number you're saying?
We don't want to go over 300.
Okay, so you're looking at 300.
good at 300.
And they're feeling that the building, the room, the place is big enough for 500.
550 plus.
It would seem to me that you're certainly going to be, safer by having smaller numbers.
Right.
And to Member Behringer, something I had discussed with city manager, if they go over the 300, then they can deal with that issue that they violated that number. Obviously, we're looking at another issue that I'm like, this just looks like a little paralysis with analysis, and it just seems like, I know we got state law. I get that. I do. But dadgum, can't move that queen. So that being said, I'm sure that you're going to take the next step. Now, will the building official be part of that program when they go to the next step?
Yes, in fact, he's the one who suggested this avenue as an opportunity for them to resolve this issue.
When they go to the next step, will he make that decision, or will it be?
No, it will be the Board of Adjustment and Appeals that will make the decision.
Okay, well, clearly, I wish that there was something we could do here tonight and say, boom, let's do this, but we don't have that magic.
Thank you. Come on, sir.
Good evening. Just to give you a little background.
Name and address, sir, please.
Jesse Wright, 3550 South Washington Avenue.
Thank you. That's for the records.
Thank you. When the property was purchased back in February of this year, as you know, the malls anywhere in U.S. need to be repositioned. You can't just continue with what you had 20, 30, 40 years ago. So as part of the repositioning of the mall, we need to look at other avenues to be able to bring traffic into the city and also into the mall. So the property is around 290,000 square feet. 90,000 square feet of that amount is allocated to Sears. As you know, Sears has already left. And I had to actually pay them to leave. Otherwise, they would have stayed here and they would have left, probably another a year and a half from now. So with 90,000 square feet of vacancy, I thought when we passed the CUP that we would have the event center already completed and done so we can move on into the next step. Now, I'd like to withdraw our request for 300 people, and I'd like to downsize it to about 200 people. Any restaurant with a couple of chefs, if you cannot get enough people to be able to cook for that many people, they can't obviously cater to that many people. So if we were to reduce the number of people to 200, so we can use the existing facilities, I would assume, as you mentioned before, is let's have a recourse. I would be more than happy to give the city attorney an indemnification letter that if we go at 201 or 202, and if the fire department comes in and shut us down, I'll be happy with that. We cannot get, first of all, our process, we've done this in other states as well. We have a process just before we have any kind of events there. They have to fill out an application, we have to run the credit, we have to sign a contract. We need to know exactly how many people are getting into 10,000 square feet. So for that reason, we're not just coming up with these numbers and saying, look, we can jam in extra 50, 100 people. We get paid based on leasing up the space. And that's it. So if they squeeze an extra 50 people, we'll make sure that we have security to make sure that they're just not going to go over that. And as Lisa mentioned, it comes to a point where we cannot really put more funds into this because it's not just a 10,000 square feet. I've got 90,000 square feet more to deal with. That has to be split in multiple spaces. And it requires HVAC. If I could get extra 3 minutes.
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Go ahead, sir.
I appreciate that. If not, I thought that Sears is going to stay till September of 2019. I did not expect that they would leave this early, and I did not expect to pay them to leave. So with that said, we're now from 290,000 square feet, we have nearly about 190,000 square feet left, 10,000 plus extra 90,000. Well, we have other vacancies within the mall as well. So I was thinking that the request would be dropped down to about 200 people. And for the record, and I didn't want to bring this up, I have no choice to bring this up. We had a meeting with Mr. Steve Adam on site, and my architect can attest to that. I thought at the time, when he approved it verbally, that we're going to go ahead and go forward. I have to say that I did not know that he had a boss named Gary, so on and so forth. If we knew that, we would have just waited till we had that meeting with him. Now, you're right. We can go to the next step, and we would have to wait another 30 days. But realistically, this has been taking a long time. I feel like if we get some cooperation from the city, we can get this thing done. 200 people, shut us down at any time you want if we have 201, 202, 203. But, we really need to move forward because I've got another 30,000. We had 2 inspections today from national tenants that we want to get them in. And, these things takes time, money. We've got to change a lot of things in that 90,000 square feet. Unless you would like 90,000 square feet to sit vacant on US 1 for the next year, year and a half. I appreciate your time.
I have a question for you, sir. You mentioned Sears a couple times and that they left. Didn't they have a lease?
They had a lease all the way to September of 2019.
Didn't they? I read somewhere that they offered to pay that lease during that time.
Exactly on the opposite.
Really?
We had 2 options, either for them to continue to stay, which means they just basically maintain a building, 90,000 square feet for the next year and a half, and we have no control over what they do or what they don't do. So I had to basically work out a termination deal with them to pay them so they can leave. And I'm very happy that they left.
Okay, it's just unusual that they had a lease and you
when
couldn't
you deal
enforce
with
it.
a dysfunctional company like Sears, I'm sure they're going to probably see this, but you have no choice to do what you have to do to get them out. And it's unfortunate that that's the case. So,
All right. Any questions? Yes. Yes, that's you.
Question for Mr. Broom. And part of my concern is obviously we're trying to get rid of the blight in the town, and having a building occupied is better than not having a building occupied. So, Mr. Broom, if this was new building going up, we would do a development agreement, correct? Or possibly could do a development agreement.
Sure, you could do a development agreement.
So is there anything akin to a development agreement that would resolve this kind of a problem?
A development agreement still would not allow you to violate the building code. That's the issue. We have
Okay.
a building official's interpretation of the requirements under the building code. So a development agreement primarily assures you certain rights to develop and gives some confidence to a developer through a developer's agreement that those certain rights he's obtained through that development agreement aren't going to change, and we're not going to change code, so he has some assurances going forward of how his project will be developed. That being, and there are certain variances to certain city codes that you can do with the development or agreement when you show need and you show enhancements in certain processes. However, when you're varying the terms of the building code as interpreted by the one person who's allowed to do that, the building official, and you want to appeal that, then the BAA is your one resource to do that.
Okay, understand that. And I guess part of me says, is there a possibility of doing an agreement? You're saying, no, there is not a possibility of doing an agreement between the city and Mr. Wright.
You could do an agreement, not an agreement that would allow you to violate the building code.
Okay.
Or fire code. I'm not sure of this project in which to apply here, but those
Okay.
codes we couldn't violate with a development agreement. If he obtained variances from certain codes, we could incorporate that into a developer's agreement.
Well, Ms. Nelson, when you go up to 550 people, of course you need more bathrooms, right? That's
Correct.
obvious. So now we're being told to build additional bathrooms. We haven't even had the fire department to come out and take a look. So what is next after that? So it seems like it's just going and going and going, and I'm thinking, my God, 10,000 square feet, we can't get that approved. What are we gonna do with 90,000 square feet? 3 different tenants. I'll mention the name, well, I can't mention the name because we don't have a signed lease yet. But, they're gonna be taking 30,000 square feet with the loading zone and so on and so forth. And these are other tenants that are gonna be coming to the city. There's only so much time you can spend on just one little project versus the other one. And by the way, I've already spent nearly about 40,000 in signage, having event center signs out there, already purchased a dance floor, everything is ready and ready to go.
I understand what you're saying, and it sounds like the Board of Adjustment and Appeals is your best bet, and I hate to send you there, but it sounds like that's the best bet. Hopefully they'll get it done.
Thank you. One thing, if you built the bathrooms, you could go ahead with the project, right?
Well, I don't know what's going to come up from the fire department. This is my request. Can we have the fire department and the building department to just meet for 10 minutes? I'll pay for that fee so that we know what else is coming up next. I don't know what else is going to come up after that. I mean, it's so many surprises that it just keep coming up, and
We get surprised too sometimes, so I appreciate what you're saying.
Next question.
Yes, sir, you're next.
Yes, I just want to know, when is this meeting that they need to go to, the Adjustments and Appeals? When is that meeting?
The last Wednesday of the month. I don't know that.
Help me
Might be
out.
the 25th.
Do we ever have a meeting where it's like we need to move quickly? I mean, I'm feeling the frustration. I'm feeling frustrated myself. We want to do something with this building. They want to do something with this building. And it just seems like there needs to be an answer out there. And if there's an answer and they can give it to them, let's go tomorrow.
I don't know if A, we can get a quorum, or B, what the advertising requirements are. So I can't answer that question. But these all have to be advertised meetings, and we have to make sure that we have the people we need. Frequently, people have lives outside of the boards and commissions, and so we can't always get a quorum except their regular evening. So I don't know the answer to that.
Can you check on that?
We can. I think the code says that if you're having a special meeting, there's an extra cost.
I think we got to do what we got to do. I really do. I think it's one thing to have to jump through hoops. It's another thing to have to wait for the hoops to get to you.
I would just make one comment. There's a process, and the process is that a design professional review the codes, the architect, the engineers review the codes, and then they bring a plan to the city to review. What sometimes people ask is for the city to give them, to tell them what's permitted, but that is not that puts the liability on the city, and they're there to hire their design professional to do that. So sometimes people are very frustrated when the city won't act as their design professional or contractor. But we're not in the business of designing, we're in the business of permitting. And so when someone says, will you tell me what's possible? The answer is, you need to hire a design professional to do that. And once we have many pre-application conferences, we have pre-application conferences, and we have done this several times to say, these are the issues, these are the codes. When we had our meeting with the mayor, we had the design professionals talk to the building official and give them a lot of ideas, but we need a plan to review.
Well, and clearly, where I'm getting at is no matter how much frustration is going on all sides here, they have to go before the board. And I'm just saying that if we can't do anything up here and there's no vote coming from here because we don't get to do that, then I would hope that we can make that meeting as quickly as possible. That's all I'm saying.
And she's going to attempt to look at that, so that's a good idea.
Mr. Johnson, just one last thing I want to say, and that is, I feel like we're only
Make
asking
it
for...
brief, if you will, sir, because we're really running late at this
Okay,
point.
just very quick.
Go ahead.
I feel like that we're asking for 200 people. We've been told by the city, you got to go to 550, and because you're going to have to go to 550, you have to provide more bathrooms. You know, it's almost like I'm asking for a medium rare steak, and I'm being told that you got to have well-done steak, and that's what is required. Well, I don't want to be told that. I mean, less people is going to require less bathrooms, and we have contracts. And again, I reiterate what I said earlier, put us under watch. If we have 1% more, shut us down. I have no problem with that. I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. You can, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. And I had, so this was, I might offer a suggestion, and again, it's a burden. As an independent business owner, it is a burden, but something that I have seen successful over the past few years. One is that whatever you choose to do is that's your right to do. You know, as long as it follows the rules, that's your right to do as a businessman, and so forth and so on. What I have found successful in the past, and the reason I'm putting this out there is because if I look at the CRA as an example, and I go leasable square footage, and I calculate every building in the CRA, it's still less than Sears Town Mall, right? And I know how much time we spent on that. And I look at Titus Landing, and I look at how much time we invested into looking at how that development process went. So when I look at leasable square footage on access to a major thoroughfare, I would argue that even as a private entity, the well-being of that entity is of concern to the city. Therefore, my suggestion would be this. Under our strategic goals for this upcoming year and for the past few years, economic development has been one, and then quality of life has been one. So when I see, it doesn't matter who owns it, as far as the property, I think that the well-being of that property falls within those two goals, thus making it worth city at least knowing what's going on. And what I found very helpful is whatever the plan may be, and whatever it might be, I've seen it done in a PowerPoint form before, and I can't speak for other council members, but what I can speak from my own self is that if we have the opportunity to just maybe sit down, and we've done it at City Hall, and just see what it is that you're envisioning, because there may be things that we may be able to gain from that as far as insight of how do our policies currently impact that vision, vice versa. And I found that very helpful. So I would welcome that, but that would be independent to each council member.
Actually, we have had several of those meetings, and we have come to this impasse because it's state law.
No, but I have.
Okay. The other thing is, I have to correct you. That's not economic development. That's redevelopment.
Sure.
There's a difference, and as you know, I did economic development for 8 years. So
Sure.
That's when you bring money in from the outside. Shopping centers recirculate money.
Thank you.
Yes. The conclusion that I come to is that you have to proceed and look at going to BAA and get whatever you need to do that. I'm sure Ms. Busaka will help you all she can.
I'll be happy to pay the extra fees if we can do this expedited.
Thank you, sir. Next item. Anyone else want to speak? Okay, Els.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
Council.
Name and address,
Attorney.
please.
My name is Sarah, and I am currently a Merritt Island resident and looking to move my family to Titusville. I'm here to discuss a topic that's not on the agenda, but does affect the local community and the nation. It's the legal cultivation and distribution of medical marijuana. I'm here tonight because I represent a group of business people who are interested in establishing a state-of-the-art cultivation facility in Titusville. I had a personal experience during my mother's battle with cancer in the late 80s and 90s that helped me understand the benefits that marijuana provides for people suffering with pain. In addition to traditional pain management measures with physicians, there were clearly benefits medical marijuana could offer my mother that legal medications could not. My mother was a God-fearing, dedicated mother and wife. She worked for the school board, and I was lucky to have her as long as I did. She passed in 1996. The issue I faced then and we face now is the criminalization and stigma attached to marijuana growers and users. Think about this for a moment. Prohibition doesn't control marijuana. Prohibition is the absence of control. It's the absence of control. So we've been lacking control for a long time, but times have changed, and now we can take it back. As you may be aware, county leaders recently granted approval for the first dispensary in Brevard County located in Palm Bay. Now is the time for city planners to collaborate with growers to identify the best territory to cultivate and work together to ensure cohesive leadership and regulation. Legalization doesn't invent marijuana. It just recognizes that it is a popular commodity that should be taxed and regulated like all other commodities. The market for marijuana is never going to go away. We can only determine who controls most of it. Tax-paying, job-creating, law-abiding businesses, or murderous, police-corrupting criminal cartels. I believe in keeping the jobs and tax dollars the local supply and distribution would generate here in Titusville. Let's work together to decriminalize and pioneer a movement to establish control and create standards for ethical practices. Let's prove to the federal government and the citizens that medical marijuana can be grown responsibly and distributed safely to the consumers. Titusville's growing infrastructure and housing development is in line with future growth. The business plan strives to create an equal opportunity work environment where everyone is treated with respect and provided the same consideration. This unique industry will provide new job opportunities at all levels. Veterans, minorities, single-family households all could secure employment. I believe legal cultivation will enhance the local community while maintaining the values this great city was founded on.
Do you need extra time?
1 minute.
Have a motion?
So moved.
I have a second. Motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go right ahead.
Medical marijuana could be the biggest cash crop since cotton. There's arguably no industry in the U.S. that's growing at a faster, more consistent pace than legal marijuana. Marijuana Business Daily's latest report, the Marijuana Business Fact Book 2017, predicts legal sales growth in the U.S. of 30% last year, 45% this year, and 300% as an aggregate between 2016 and 2021 to about a $17 billion market. We have identified potential locations in the Titusville area and are requesting the opportunity to meet with applicable city leaders to discuss this venture in greater detail and secure approval for our cultivation operation. Our state-of-the-art facility would help meet the needs of the state of Florida, and we want to work with you to establish a location for our facility so that we can be one of the first ones in line to secure a business license from the state as soon as they're available.
I have a question. So you in there with the medical marijuana, you mentioned legalization of recreational marijuana. Is that correct?
Not recreational, sir, no. All just medicinal purposes.
Somehow I heard you talking about a whole different thing, which you may know that Mr. Morgan, the attorney in Orlando, is proposing that item to go onto the referendum for the next election. So anything that we would do with that, I would suggest, or probably anything else right now, wait until that election is over where we see what the will of the people really is. Because Mr. Morgan said he was just talking about, for 2 elections, he was just talking about medical marijuana for the kids. And that's not what he's talking about now. So I would be hesitant to establish anything at this point until we know where everything's going. Yes?
I was just going to suggest she could talk to Ms. Busaka, because you can have, right now you can have a dispensary. I don't know if there's any zoning in the city for actual cultivation.
Ms. Busaka's
And that's what I'm trying to determine.
And here
perhaps.
comes Ms. Busaka.
I don't have the rules in front of me. It's been a lot of pop quizzes this evening. But my understanding is that the state regulates the everything but the dispensaries. If you want to grow it, you have to go to the state and get a license. And I don't know if you mean Titusville or the unincorporated area of Titusville.
I found some vacant land and unincorporated in some existing buildings.
Okay, but that, I think that you have to go get a state license first, but I could be dead wrong. But I'm happy to tell them what I know, but my guess is that this lady probably knows more than I do, but
You're doing really good on the pop quizzes.
doesn't feel like. I gave blood earlier this morning. I had not intended to do it twice, but apparently that's the way it's going.
You're doing good.
Did I hear you? Did I hear you say you found something in the unincorporated area?
Yes.
That's
located
outside of Titusville.
some land north,
So that's the county.
likely.
You need to talk to the county if you
Yeah,
want
some
something down there.
existing in the city as well.
Hmm?
We located some real estate in the city as well that's of interest,
Well,
so,
It's kind of moot now because it's the state that grants that.
understood.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have another pop quiz?
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue, and I think that you have passed out before you. Is that right? You have this sheet? Is that right? You have that? Okay. Okay, here it comes. Okay, well, what that is this is something that I sent to you June the 29th, and so I'm just giving you a copy of what I sent to you already. Yesterday, I emailed you a second draft. That was the first draft. And it regards a LOMAR. The title is, of this email just sent you, is Second Draft of Affidavit Regarding Truths and Mistakes are Revealed by the LOMAR. And that's of Baker's subdivision. For your review and comments and request for you to call me on this subject. That's the title that I've just sent to you yesterday. Now, the LOMAR is a letter of map revision, and that it has to do with, it was dated 2016 for Baker's subdivision, and it removed 80% of the homes of Baker's subdivision that were in the 100-year floodplain as per the flood zone map dated 1989. This LOMAR supersedes all information and calculations that disagree with this LOMAR. So I'm going to read a quote from this letter that I just sent you. It says, quoting from the affidavit, unfortunately, these truths reveal painful mistakes that have resulted in injury, not just to our citizens, but also injury to our city government. I am hopeful that the acceptance of these truths will result in reconciliation, peace, and forgiveness. After truth number 7, I wrote, there's 7 truths right there. This lengthy misinformation and misconduct is a source of injury and great cost to some homeowners whose homes are now removed from the fictional flood zone of the 1989 firm map. Therefore, I request that all of the parties that I have sent this correspondence to call me or to meet with me to discuss the need for admission of these 7 truths by our city. So what you have before you is a handout showing 6 truths, and what I did is I added another truth. I'll read that to you. It says, I just sent to you. It says, truth number 2, as this LOMAR supersedes in truth, just as I said to you. Therefore, approve of the LOMAR in the absence of calculation leads to approval of the LOMAR, and the absence leads to the conclusion that the flood zone elevation of 20 feet for Baker's subdivision on the 1989 and 2014 maps is not only erroneous, but also has no basis of calculation, is fabricated, fictional, and deliberately erroneous. And then I go on to explain why it is also it's erroneous, deliberately erroneous. So I'm asking you to call me and set up a meeting if we need to discuss this issue. Thank you. Any questions?
I see none, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I don't see anybody coming forward. I have one more.
My name's Joe Hill. I'm a resident here of Titusville. And first thing is another friendly reminder about using your microphones. It is a pain at home when you talk back and forth, the microphone's on, you can't hear what you're saying. This has to do with the power poles that have been put in along South Hopkins. I have a small office over there. Picture number 1 there is my office. If you go to the second picture,
That's what I found on the morning of February the 19th when I went over there. I've been there earlier that day. I left to go to breakfast, run a couple errands, and come back. I can't even get into my place. The second picture is standing at the adjacent building, walking toward my building. And you can see they've got this big truck set up in my front. They're putting a big pole right in my parking lot. You've got 4 feet of ground right there next to it, and they put it in my parking lot. If you look in the first picture, you'll notice I have a driveway on that right side. Now I've lost about 2.5 feet of access to get in there. It's hard enough to back a trailer in and out of there. The other pictures are just some more shots. They took out 4 feet of curb, came in and dumped this thing right in my parking lot. No notice, no notification. I talked to several of the other businesses along that street. They're all had the same issue. No notice. They come in and bushwhack you when nobody's there. You come in and you can't even park. So there needs to be better coordination either with the city, with these people coming in and doing this, working with the business owners, because this is just ridiculous. And so I didn't tell any of the folks that I was coming up here, or you probably have some more business owners up here with the same complaint. I'm just beating them at the bush.
Sir, I totally agree with you. But are these the same poles that we saw yesterday?
No, sir, these are additional poles, and
we have other areas.
I know they put one right in the middle of a sidewalk.
Actually,
We have
4.
We have a site inspector that is aware of this. I have seen an email from Florida Power and Light saying that several, and I don't have it in front of me because, again, it's the theme of the evening, but there is a email that, sir, if you give me an email address I can send you, that shows that some of these are being relocated, but I don't know which ones. But the site inspector that goes out, that works for the city, has noted the issues and is working with FPL to correct some of these issues. I just don't have the specifics in front of me.
We find it unacceptable also, sir. Well, on the other ones, I apologize, but it's not us. It's FP&L. We're on your side.
So, Joe, we'll get that information and to double check to make sure that these poles are on the list as well. But to your point, we had discovered 4 poles being put in the middle of the sidewalk in residential areas. In the middle of the sidewalk.
Yeah, I saw one on Barnum. And I went through all these where they put these poles in. They didn't block anybody else's driveway like they did mine. And it's just very irritating. Then the other thing, they didn't even fill the thing in. It all washed out, and I had a cavern underneath my driveway, and I happened to bushwhack the FPL guy there, and they did come and fill that in. But.
Thank you for coming, sir. Anyone else wish to speak? I don't see any. Oh, yes, I do. Please, anybody that wants to speak, please come forward so we don't come forward now and just sit up here. Otherwise.
Hi,
Yes,
ladies
ma'am.
and gentlemen. Did you all get my email?
I don't know who you are, ma'am.
My name is Patricia Tooming, and
Okay.
I am a
Oh,
resident.
yes, ma'am. I recognize you now.
Yes. I live on Gulfview Drive here in Titusville. So I got a response email from you today that said that you all may have come up with a different idea for the plant park.
Yes, ma'am. And I would suggest, since this is an item that's on the agenda, that's not supposed to be talked at this point in time at petitions and requests. So will you come back at the proper time in this meeting?
Okay. So is that after all of this is done?
It's wherever it is on the agenda, ma'am, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I see no one coming forward, do I? Does anybody else want to speak? Sir, you move forward? No, okay. Next item.
Yes, sir. Mr. Tooming, the agenda item is item 12A under old business.
Next item is the consent agenda.
Yes, council, would you like to pull any of the agenda items on consent?
No.
Council members?
I'd like to pull 8D.
8D?
Correct.
Okay.
8B or D?
D is in dog.
And we have cards on items D, F, and I. And Mayor, we do have a resolution. So I'll read the consent agenda items for the record and then proceed to vote. Consent agenda item 8A, approve the donation and conveyance of property located at 550 South Brown Avenue for affordable rental housing development, and authorize the mayor to sign the developer agreement, land use restricted agreement, and the deed. Consent agenda item 8B, approve award of bid number 18B026 to Ryan Hetco Flow Solutions of Orlando, Florida, for the purchase of 3,000-gallon chlorine storage tanks and one 2,500-gallon chlorine storage tank in the amount of $25,500, and authorize the city manager to issue the purchase order necessary to make this purchase. Consent agenda item 8C, approve the request for leave of absence for TEC Chairman Jim Yantz from June 2018 to August 2018. Consent agenda item 8D, approve advisability to amend section 33-6A3, minimum living areas for residential units in a planned development, section 34-4A, minimum land area required for planned development. Consent agenda item 8E, approve the mayor to sign an amendment 1 to grant agreement approved and signed on 27 February 2018, resolution 4-2018, DEO agreement number G0018. Consent agenda item 8F, approve the award of work order BFA WR003 to Barnes, Farland & Associates in the amount of $145,955.01 to provide engineering consulting services, including but not limited to the preparation of design drawings and specifications, permitting, bidding assistant, and construction administration service for Area 2 well field raw water main maintenance project, and authorize the mayor to execute the work order. Consent agenda item 8G, approve the budget amendment and the award of contract bid 18B039 to Brevard Aluminum Construction Company Incorporated of Titusville, Florida, in the amount of $19,310 to replace field operations aluminum awning, including structure and lighting, and authorize the city manager to execute the said contract, subject to resolution contract terms by the city attorney. Consent agenda item 8H, authorize the renewal of the mutual aid agreement for fire services between the Titusville Fire Department, NASA, Kennedy Space Center for a period of 5 years, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. Consent agenda item 8I, approve the attached budget amendment and increase the purchase order authorization to Denella Corporation of Florida by $50,000 for vector record relocations repair to city water system utilities associated with the Florida East Central Regional Rail Trail construction project, and authorize the city manager to place the instruments necessary to engage the contractor. Consent agenda item 8J, approve subject to resolution of the contract terms by the city attorney and city manager, the award of contract to top-ranked firm Kennedy Horn Associates Incorporated to provide continuing engineering consulting services for RFQ 17Q30, Code 118 municipal regulatory review services during a three-year initial term with 2 optional 1-year extensions, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. Consent agenda item 8K, approve resolution 152018, amendment to the state of Florida Area 4 well utility easement number 31892, requesting the Board of Trustees of the Internal Improvement Trust Fund of the state of Florida to amend the replacing existing easement number 31892 to accommodate as-built locations of the city water utilities for Area 4 well field. Consent agenda item 8L, approve resolution number 162018, which celebrates 50 years of municipal home rule powers in the Florida State Constitution. Reminder, sir, we do have 2 resolutions in this consent.
Where is the other one? K is a resolution.
And L, sir.
And L? Oh, there it is. Okay. We have, I need a motion to approve items A, C, E, G, H, J, K, and L.
I can make that motion.
I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? It's a resolution vote, please, clerk. Roll call vote.
Member Diesel?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Behringer?
Yes.
Member Stokel? And she's
Stokoe's
absent.
not here.
Yes, thank you.
All right, the first item that has been pulled is B.
It's actually D, sir, as in Delta.
D, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I marked it down.
So if B was not pulled, we'll need a motion to
It
approve B
wasn't.
as well.
Can I have a motion to approve item B?
Move to approve consent agenda item B.
Can I have a second? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes.
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 Any opposed, like sign, passes. Okay, D is next. I believe that was you, sir.
It was. So, under 8D, under advisability, there's 4 square footages of houses that we're looking at. Single-family town, condominium, and multifamily. Currently, as written, with multifamily, condominium, and townhome, I'm comfortable with those sizes. The single-family, I just have questions on where are we currently at? What's the idea of going that small? In my opinion, is that small.
Yep.
Can you
What
help
you
me?
see is where we are currently, the current code.
Right, okay,
So the current code for single-family is a minimum of 900 square feet.
got it.
And what I distributed to you is some pictures of what some of these small homes look like,
Right,
as well as, in one case, we have had someone come in and actually propose this to talk about a specific piece of property. So I've provided that information to you, as well as a sketch of what a community of the tiny homes could look like. And the intent here is, if we want to have options for people who want these homes, whether it be because of affordability or for whatever reason, the planned development is an excellent opportunity to do that because it requires a public hearing and approval by this council. So each individual can be weighed on its individual merits rather than saying that this type of development would be appropriate in all cases. And that's what we're talking about.
What of the example of like the yellow house, what's the square, can you give me a ballpark on that?
These are probably run 300 to 400 square feet.
Okay, all right. And here's where, so thank you for that. So there are, I guess, 2 things that I'm looking at. One is just currently as code has written that the 900, or where we're at with 900, I think is too small for single family. I think it should be bigger, but not inclusive of the tiny home concept. So as an example, I think that there are 2 distinct categories that could come out of this. One is single family, as what I would consider to be traditional single family. You probably got 2 to 3 bedrooms in there, so forth and so on. I think ours should be a little bit bigger. But then I think there could be an additional subcategory of tiny home. And the reason that I say that is, as an example, if this was not part of a planned community development, then how that impacts surrounding communities, I have some trouble with. As an example, if this was on a portion of our community that had not been developed or was concurrent or wanted by the surrounding community, then I would say that's great, and the process we have in place to afford that opportunity is there. But I just think that it is a different distinction besides just regular single-family home.
We were not proposing that tiny homes be permitted in any option except through the planned development. We require the public hearing and the approval by the council. We're not suggesting that. What we have here for 900 square feet is currently what the R1C is developed at.
Right.
And so that was the minimum that is in the current plan development. We think that there should be an option, at least, to explore the option of looking at smaller homes.
I would be comfortable with it. I just would be if it can be more clearly distinguished, is really what I'm looking for. Because I think that there's an opportunity as a developer. I think it gives too much flexibility in a developer to bring in a development that does not meet the intent of what we've created, which has a lot of different consequences to it.
I have a question. Ms. Busak, but what we have here is limited, as I think you just said, to plan development only, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So the whole plan would have to be okayed.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Before they can do it, so I think.
That's right.
I think we got it covered.
But what we can certainly talk about is some criteria that would give you some guidance as to compatibility and that kind of thing, so that you will have a better idea of what you're reviewing and what the standards are.
Yeah, but from a compatibility standpoint, and just being very, very clear, my concern is that because of the age of our communities, a developer maybe 2 meetings ago, he made a very good point. He goes, we're getting close to, it's hard to find land. And so what that means is how, and this is something that this council and the next council is going to have to really deal with, is how do we find concurrency, in my opinion, with what currently exists and has existed for 30 years while bringing in homes that possibly reflect that based on community, culture, and needs, in addition to areas that maybe haven't been developed where something that is like this is totally welcome, and it's in the same city, but it's in a different part of the city. And so that's the big part to me is that the surrounding community have an opportunity to view, look, and distinguish these projects for what they are, and to figure out how it's going to go throughout that entire community. We have one later on the agenda where I think this is something that's starting to come forward to us, so I just want to recognize it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And can I ask Mr. Behringer a question?
Yes.
Matt, are you talking about having single-family homes that are maybe more than the 900 square feet, or are you saying we're going to look at whatever the staff comes up with and make a determination from there?
I think that the more than 900 square feet is probably a discussion for a different day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to see what staff comes forward with.
Right. Because when relative to square footage and that footprint, to Ms. Busaka's credit, there are a million different details and impacts that go into every one of those steps. So for that, it deserves the time that it's warranted. But just my humble opinion is
I just
where we're
wanted
at.
to make sure that we weren't limiting ourselves, because we do have a homeless problem in our city, and we need affordable housing. And I'd rather see a roof over a kid's head than them out on the streets.
It's also, there's the millennials seem to like this sort of home because they're small and they don't need a large home. So there are people who will buy these, and a few years ago I'd have bet against it, but today things have changed. Okay, anything else on that, sir?
That's it.
Did you want to read these as we go along, or?
Yes, sir, we've already read them for the record.
You got them all there?
Yes, sir,
Okay.
so you have 2 more cards.
All right, item F.
2 more cards.
Oh, another card. Will the first card come forward? You want to call that?
We have Kathleen Burson.
She's first, and then you. That's all right. My fault. They should have read the name out.
Good evening, how are you?
Good evening.
Kathleen Burson, Titusville, Florida. I'm just a little bit confused by this item. Does this have anything to do with patio homes? Does this have anything to do with smaller lot sizes? I didn't see any of that described in the item. What can you guys, is it about just tiny homes, or what is this about?
We have a planned development process in which if you have an idea, you get to come in and present it within certain parameters. And it's basically like writing your own zoning code. You can talk about your minimum lot size and your setbacks. It is not used as frequently as it could be, we believe, for a couple of reasons. One is it requires a minimum of 5 acres. Well, we would like to see it being utilized on smaller lots if that is possible. And the second reason,
do you want to see used?
The planned development
okay, the
option.
PD.
And the second is that we have had several people who have expressed interest in these tiny home communities, which have perhaps, as we showed you here, a common house, a central green, and then some houses that all build up. So it's a little neighborhood. And we would like the opportunity to explore this option. And that's what we're talking about. And all we're doing is saying, let us bring this forward to you. Again, there is nothing that happens without a public hearing and everyone in the neighborhood being noticed.
So you're looking at criteria.
Correct. That's all we're asking for is advisability to create that.
Okay.
And you're welcome to this if you'd like.
Oh, thank you. To keep this? Okay. Well, that was my concern, was that that criteria is really critical. You don't want to see someone take 5 acres or 2 acres, if it comes down to that, and just put up tiny homes and say, this is our tiny home development. You know, there's a lot of community, new urbanist criteria that needs to go along with that. And if that's what you're talking about, then I'd love to see it. Is that exactly what you're?
That's what we've been asked, is that all right to explore this and bring it back?
Okay, so it's not just to allow smaller lots and smaller homes. It's to look at the whole big picture and how that criteria.
Well, I don't know yet.
Creates a neighborhood.
That's one of the things that we need to talk about. Okay. But yes, I don't see it one tiny home sitting in the middle of a quarter-acre lot with everybody else having a 1,200 square foot house. What we're talking about are communities where these little homes would fit.
Okay. And I'd like to see criteria for open space especially. You know, that's one thing to do a green, but, and I think that's great. But we need to look at just a give and take. You're going to put a lot of density and, you know, what if it's not tiny homes? What if it's single family homes and I just want to bring them back together in patio home form that we fought against years ago and eliminated patio homes from our code, and then we just bring that back and without a give and take of certain things.
The planned development has a 35% open space requirement.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Berenger?
Just in following up on, that would be of concern to me, just conservation, because if the idea is that it's less space specific to house, to the house itself is just impact to that surrounding area.
Clerk, call the next card, please.
Brett Hilbrand.
Thank you. I wasn't prepared to speak tonight, but
It's okay. If you will name and address for the
I'm sorry,
record,
Brett
please.
Hilbrand. I'm from Longwood, Florida.
Thank you.
I'm the owner of Cornerstone Tiny Homes. We're a subsidiary of Cornerstone Design Build, located in Longwood. We're a licensed Florida building contractor. 4 years ago, we went from building and remodeling regular homes to building tiny homes exclusively. We have Florida state approval of the first modular tiny house that is Florida Building Code compliant. Since building tiny homes, we realized quickly that the reasons for wanting to go smaller were sound. We started seeing this not so much as a fad, but as a real solution to the excesses that many of us slave over to provide for our families. I'm here to ask to take steps to allow for a new, more affordable housing solution. Affordable housing is defined as 30% or less of your income goes to your total housing budget. Florida has the third lowest affordable housing availability in the country, with only 27 available units for every 100 families in need. Between 57 and 70% of the families or people in need are 1 to 2 person households. There's no bedroom shortage in this country. But there is a huge affordable housing crisis that should be screaming that we're building homes that are way bigger than we need to build. For every 10 to 20 homes built at over $400,000, a demand is created for one home to be built for under $150,000. I have Orlando statistics because I wasn't prepared to speak tonight, but the first quarter of 2017, Orlando created a demand for 225 homes to be built at under $150,000. 14 were built. We found some lots in Oviedo, Florida, that were perfect for our houses. We got these lots. We have 10 lots under contract with 90 days to closing. We put a post on our Facebook page on a Thursday. It went viral. Friday night, we were on 3 different newscasts. We made several papers, and that Friday it took in $4,000 or $5,000 deposits for those 10 lots that actually were turned into 7 lots by the city because we were landlocked on 3. We could have sold 35 to 40 homes in that single day on tiny homes. We didn't build a single one of these due to the fact that developmental costs and the county and city fees made the project a losing proposition. The first thing it proved to us is there was a huge demand for this type of housing. The second thing it proved to us is we have no business being developers. We're trying to be home builders. We're working in conjunction with other developers on these. What brought this up was the fact that we're working with developers trying to find properties to do this with. Our new code-compliant tiny home meets or exceeds the Florida Building Code and is delivered complete to an attached awaiting foundation. We feel this is a perfect solution to legal tiny house living and a great step to acceptance by building and zoning officials, which, by the way, are hounded on a daily or weekly basis of where can I put my tiny home. These homes are not on wheels. These are foundation-based homes and legal in the eyes of the state of Florida. They're inspected by a state-appointed third-party engineer in our shop. It's built within stringent tolerances that are closely monitored by a state-licensed contractor and engineer.
You need additional time, sir?
30 seconds.
How about a minute?
I'll take it.
Okay. I have a motion for a minute. Extra
Got a
time.
motion for a minute.
I have a motion, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you. These are code compliant and inspected by a state-appointed third-party engineer in our shop. It's built within stringent tolerances and closely monitored by a state-licensed contractor and engineer. We expect our homes to have the same or greater lifespan than that of typical site-built homes. Our homes on available county-owned surplus lots can cost as little as $450 a month. This is home ownership. This is not rent. This is home ownership. In order for this to work, we need a city or a county with no minimum square footage requirements on new construction. These barriers are being overcome county by county. We also need a fair and reasonable impact fee structure based on square footage or number of habitable spaces. I respectfully ask this board to look into abolishing the minimum square footage requirement in residential zoning. This was written for Orange County and Osceola County and the city of Orlando. Actually, what we're asking for is the planned development for these. We understand I feel like we're rational in what we're doing. We started out building these on wheels, and all my competition is trying to get people like you to agree to allow 200 square foot homes on wheels to be put next to 4,000 square foot homes. We're rational enough to know that's not going to happen. Allow us the ability to go in front of the different neighborhoods with a planned development and pitch what we're trying to do. Because I think what you'll see is that you're bringing in a lot of new development into Titusville, and you're also bringing a lot of jobs that are going to need this type of housing. And we think we've got a solution for this. We're big in the Keys right now. So.
Thank you. A minute goes faster than you thought.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for coming over.
Is there any questions before
Any questions for this gentleman?
Yeah. So what is the typical cost for a tiny home? Say it's 400 square feet, 500 square feet.
We're in the $60,000 to $65,000 range right now. That's
Okay.
not developmental costs or anything like that, because that can't be calculated unless we know the piece of property. What it amounts to is a brand new home without any kind of new defects. The same thing, the same kind of 12 years without any kind of maintenance, possibly. At a price point that's half that of apartment living that these people are being subsidized in.
Okay, sounds good.
And actually, we're not talking about just subsidized housing or people that are in need of subsidized housing.
Yeah.
This runs from millennials to my biggest customer base is 50 to 70-year-old single women that are well-heeled.
Wow.
It would surprise you. It's not just a bunch of granola eaters and sandal wearers and that type of thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor, I'd like to thank this gentleman for bringing the idea to Titusville. I think it's a great idea and allowing us to work on a planned development for you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Any other cards on this item?
No, sir.
Do you have a card in, sir?
No, but I'm with him, I'm the developer.
You can speak, but you'll have to fill out a card, okay? After you speak.
Okay, all right, so I can speak first. You don't mind?
We made an exception for you.
All right, sir, I appreciate it. My name is John Carroll, and I'm also from Longwood area. We met with Brad Parrish. We went over our plans and our ideas and our concept, what we want to do. We looked at numerous pieces of property. We came up with a conceptual plan to actually come into the South Street District. It's your tier one. Where's Terry at? It's the tier one on what you're looking to renovate and rehabilitate. We asked about South Leon condominiums. We'd like to take that and tear it down for you. We want to bring a concept that will allow people the option to buy a home in a neighborhood, small pocket neighborhood, community designed, that they can afford. There's a need, there's a desire. It's the Levittown model from the 1950s. It's a small home that can be built upon, but it offers a lot of terrific value to the customer, and it also allows a lot of value to the community when we put these in. And that's what we're asking for. Change the PD, remove the minimum square footage, approve it tonight. We've already got a contract on the property. Let us move forward. Let us put one home on a vacant city lot, prove the value, show you the demand, show you what we can do in Titusville. We can make this a star. We can make housing that's affordable. We don't need government subsidies, and it can be exciting, brand new, and dramatic. And that's what we want to bring to the table. Please vote on this tonight if you can. Give us that option.
You have to give us the time to do it.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your coming, and we will be voting on it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other cards on this item? Okay. Now, where was I? Item F?
Sure, you'll need to vote on that.
What's-
You'll need
what
to
is
vote
it?
on D.
Item, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, item E?
I think they're asking, go ahead and put it on.
Oh, I'm not listening. Okay, let's do that. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve consent agenda item D.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. We voted on it. You didn't hear me. You tell them about it, okay? Next item, please. F.
Stan Johnston?
You don't read the item first?
Sure, it's already been read.
Okay, all right. Item 8F, I'm against this. My name is Stan Johnston, 860 Poinsett Avenue. And I'm against this because, as far as I can see, it's not, doesn't make sense in the terms of logic. And in the past is that we know that Water Resources have made some big errors with their consultants in the area the well field that is south of 50, we've lost millions of dollars, and we put the well field to rest and so forth. So that's one of the areas that's millions of dollars that we lost. In this particular case, we're looking at a water line, raw water line that's been in, I don't know, it's been here 18, 20 years, whatever, and it's been operational. Now we're saying, hey, something's wrong with it. So something has happened, and the contract that you have for fixing it doesn't make sense to me. Let me read it to you. It says if this involves a pigging operation, which is like putting a mop or something through a water line and flushing it out, not getting debris out of the water line. So anyhow, it says consultant shall provide a written engineering report describing what was wrong, such as air in the system, sand in the system, etc., and recommending any capital improvements or preventive maintenance programs to prevent recurrence. Well, that sounds great. I want to agree with that. But the thing is the contract is for doing all these other things. Is doing the pigging, which is going to be expensive, and doing all kinds of topographical work and so forth, survey work. So what it should say is listen, we need to find out what the problem is first of all. And it doesn't say that. It should find the problem, what it is, because it appears to me is what can easily happen is you're going to have all this work done, and it's not about the problem. In this particular case, this water line's been operational for I don't know how many years, maybe I expect over 15 years. And now we got a problem that we're going to throw in $145,000. That's just in the consultant fees. That's not in the work that they're going to design. So I expect the work's going to design as well over $200,000. I expect. So I think this is something that just doesn't make sense. So I'm looking for you to ask me questions so that you'll understand why it doesn't make sense. Maybe you don't understand what I'm saying. In other words, what are we going to do? We're going to build a whole bunch of operation, but let's suppose it was just an air entrapment in the line. It could be air entrapment in the line. Yet we're going to do something else. We're going to spend all this money. And it seems like there ought to be a place where we stop this thing. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion on item F? Oh, sorry. Are there any more? Sorry. Any more cards? No, sir. Motion on item F.
I'd move to approve consent agenda item F.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item is I. Is that correct?
Yes. We have one card. It's Mr. Johnston.
Mr. Johnston?
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue. Ms. Nelson, you might remember this issue that I brought up before about the problems we had on the rails trail, whatever you call it, and that we had a whole bunch of damage done on the fiber optics and so forth, and also other systems that we had, and it was just one break after another. And we never did get an answer on it. We just said, hey, it's going to be dealt with. So whether this involves that or not, I don't know. But the thing is this, we were to, I believe we're supposed to do some kind of construction management or something, or something, or what do you call it, inspection. And it looks like now we got more repairs, relocations, and so forth. So I put neither on this because I don't know exactly what in the world this particular item is, but it's been a thorn in the side as far as all these damages that were done to existing utilities. So that's what I'm putting neither on this. So I think you should look into it. Thank you.
I was going to say, I didn't know if Mr. Larice or Mr. Broom wanted to address why we're spending the money for this item.
Sir, well, the one thing I can address is there was damages to the trail. We did contact the responsible parties and did settle that and did recover over $100,000 to pay for those damages.
Okay. Any other questions from council? I see none. I'll accept the motion.
Move to approve consent agenda item I, rail trail utility relocation and repair.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. I think we are through with the consent agenda. And we are on item 9, ordinances, second reading, public hearing, and related action.
Yes, Mayor. Next item is item 9A, ordinance number 23, 2018, relating to assembly uses, recreational, commercial amusement, and churches. This is the second reading and second public hearing of ordinance number 23, 2018. This is an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the land development regulations relating to assembly uses, recreational and commercial amusement and churches in the general use GU zoning district, specifically amending section 2854 use table to add recreation and commercial amusement indoor as a conditional use, amending section 28236 church to add churches as a conditional use, and amending section 28275 recreation and commercial amusement indoor to define standards for conditional uses, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the land development regulations.
The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this action 4-0. Council approved advisability for staff to consider banquet centers as a conditional use in GU zoning classification based upon a request from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we have Ms. Busaka here to answer any questions you may have on this second reading and final public hearing.
You have any questions for Ms. Busaka? I see none. Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Clerk, are there any speakers on this? By
No,
card?
sir.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Council discussion. Any discussion by council? No discussion. I'll ask for a motion.
Move to approve ordinance number 23-2018 relating to assembly uses.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Roll call. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Behringer?
Yes.
Member Diesel?
Yes. Okay, passes unanimously. Item B.
Yes, this is item 9B, ordinance number 24-2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the land development regulations relating to community centers, specifically amending Section 2854 use table and Section 28238 community centers to expand the zoning classifications in which community centers are a permitted, limited, or conditional use, and providing for standards for community centers as a permitted use with limitation and a conditional use, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the land development regulations. This is the second reading and second public hearing.
The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval 4-0 with the following recommendations. Number 1, delete residential zoning districts RE, RR, R1A, R1B, and R1C from consideration as an allowable conditional use. Number 2, have a clear definition for public agency. And number 3, the nonprofits need to be approved as a conditional use on a case-by-case basis. On April 24, 2018, City Council approved advisability for staff to consider expanding the zoning districts in which community centers could be located. Current regulations limit community centers to urban mixed use, UMU, Indian River City Neighborhood Commercial, IRCN, C, and downtown mixed use, DMU zoning districts. City staff is proposing that the regulations related to community centers be extended as shown in your packet. The proposed changes are consistent with existing use standards for community service, Section 28.239. At the June 12, 2018 meeting, Councilmember Nelson recommended deletion of the limitations on community centers within UMU zoning district. This change has been made and highlighted in the attached ordinance. And Ms. Busaka is here to answer any questions you may have on the second reading and final public hearing on this issue.
Anyone have questions of Ms. Busaka?
I was just curious, Ms. Busaka, are you in agreement with the recommendations?
Yes, ma'am.
From
Staff
Planning and
is.
Zoning?
Oh, and with recommendations from Planning and
Yeah.
Zoning? No, we're not.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
Would you like to explain why?
Yeah.
We have to hear.
All right.
Please.
Of course. The first recommendation, and I have to get this, the first recommendation, oops, I apologize. This is my first foray into 21st century here. I'm used to paper. I've gotten me all the way to the bottom of the airport ordinance. I can't talk until I see it in front of me. Okay. The first change was to make one of the changes is to make the social services a conditional use permit. The reason that this change was created was to allow, in part, a Boys and Girls Club to be permitted in a property that's being developed by North Brevard Charities.
Correct.
And we feel that community centers are intended to be put into communities, and that there is not the need that they have to go through a conditional use permit, that the conditions that we have placed on them as far as setbacks from residential and that kind of thing should make them appropriate for use in a community. And that's why the staff did not agree with the idea that this should be a conditional use permit. The second option was a definition that we did not know how to make this any clearer. And so we have said that the way it is written, we feel we're comfortable with that. The third option is, the third comment that they made, and I don't have it in front of me yet. What was the third one that they made?
The nonprofits need to be approved as conditional use.
Right, that's where we believe that it's.
Yeah, the last
Right.
one was to delete residential zoning districts RE, RR, R1A, R1B, R1C from consideration.
Yeah.
We think community centers should be in communities. If you go into a subdivision which has a common community center, those are built as part of the development, and that it's very common for there to be some kind of recreational facility near the pool or something like that, that we believe would be similar to a community center. When it comes to ownership or who operates it, zoning doesn't typically look at ownership and operation, we look at use. And so if the use is one in which you can have a group of people come in and the impacts are the same regardless of who operates it, the staff is comfortable with that.
Understood. That was the only question I had.
Go ahead.
And I'm, just for clarity, so I believe that I am in agreement with the idea of who operates it. I don't believe that zoning should be a portion of that. And the reason I say that is because I just want to make sure that we're not limited to it being nonprofit. The recommendation says nonprofit as conditional use.
Right.
Of which I am totally against, because I don't care if you tax the status if you're going to do the deal. So I just, that's my opinion. And by making it or relegating it solely to one or the other, we lose option of people who would actually come and do that. As a case in point, if I did create a development and I did have a community center as portion of that development, and I, as the developer, did not want to operate that, and I could find somebody who did outside the tenets of the whatever it may be, I have somebody that can do that. They may be for profit, but they're running it. I would be totally okay with that.
Yeah.
So I just, I don't care as long as it's getting done well.
That's how zoning looks at it.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay. I'll open public hearing. Clerk, are there cards on this?
No, sir.
Close the public hearing. Council, any further discussion? No? I'll ask for a motion then.
I'd move to approve ordinance number 24-2018 relating to community centers.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion. There was one item that I believe you said you were not opposed to?
Yes, and that was the suggestion where we just delete any limitations on UMU. That's an artifact from when the UMU was created many years ago, and we think that it's very limiting and should probably be removed. And that was the suggestion made by Member Nelson at the last meeting.
And I thought that you guys had put that in.
It is shown as strike-through, yes.
So as written.
As written, yes.
Include that.
Yeah, with that recommendation.
It's already in there.
Hmm?
Yeah,
Okay, as written? All right. all
As
right.
written.
I just want to make sure it's in there. All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. It's roll call vote, please.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes?
Vice Mayor Barringer.
Yes.
Member Diesel.
Yes.
Member Nelson.
Passes unanimously. Next item, 9C.
9C, ordinance number 25, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the land development regulations to adopt exhibits related to the Arthur Dunn Air Park impact areas, which were inadvertently deleted from the code, specifically amending sections 2944 Air Park and Airport Height Notification Zone and Regulations, 2945 Air Park and Airport Runway Protection Zone and Regulations, 2946 Air Park and Airport Noise Impact Zone and Regulations, 2947 Navigation Easements, Waiver of Claims, Notice of Disclosure, 2948 Construction Modification, Air Park and Airport Noise Impact Zone, 2949 Other Regulations, and 2952 Air Park and Airport Impact Areas, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the land development regulations. This is the second reading and second public hearing.
The Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval 4-0. By adopting ordinance number 27-2003, Council adopted regulations and associated exhibits creating a number of protected zones adjacent to the Space Coast Regional Airport, Arthur Dunn Air Park. With the subsequent adoption of ordinance 25-2007, several exhibits were inadvertently omitted from the code during the codification process. The intent of the proposed ordinance is to reinstate the exhibits adopted in 2003. These exhibits include the Airport Height Notification Zone, the Airport Runway Protection Zone, restricted zones for educational facilities, and an easement waiver of claims notice of disclosure map. And Ms. Busaka is here to answer any questions that you may have on this, your second reading and final public hearing.
Council, any questions for Ms. Busaka? I see none. I'll open the public hearing. Clerk, are there any cards?
No, sir.
Close the public hearing. Council discussion? Hear any? I'll ask for a motion on item 9C.
Move to approve ordinance number 25-2018 relating to airport and air park regulations. Can't talk enough.
It's all right. You're doing great. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Barringer.
Yes.
Member Diesel.
Yes.
Member Nelson.
Yes.
Mayor Johnson.
Yes. Passes unanimously. Next item is 9D and quasi-judicial rules.
Yes, sir. During the public hearing portion of the meeting, anyone wishing to speak on a quasi-judicial item must first sign a public hearing agenda card and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located on the table in the council chambers along the wall. Those speaking in favor of requests will be heard first. Those opposed will be heard second. Those who wish to make a public comment on the item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. Witnesses may be cross-examined by the applicant, counsel, staff representatives, such other representatives as authorized by the council. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the city council to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the city clerk. City clerk, have all persons wishing to speak before the city council signed an oath card? Yes. If there is anyone present who has not signed an oath card that wishes to speak on a quasi-judicial item, please submit a card at this time. City clerk, have all agenda items been properly advertised? Yes. Have any council members visited any of the sites or spoken to any members of the public regarding an item to be reviewed?
No.
Thank you.
The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval as action 5-0. A petition, easement vacation number 1-2018, has been received from Mike Cunningham to vacate a portion of public utility and drainage easement. The easement is a combined 20-foot public utility and drain easement along the property line between lots 45 and 46, ending the combined 50-foot common ingress and egress easement. The easements were established as part of the Central Park Estates Plat Book 35, pages 3 through 6 of the Brevard Clerk of Court Records. The applicant will unify both properties into one larger lot and is now requesting to vacate a portion of the easement in order to accommodate the construction of one single-family home in the uplands portion of the lots. No objections have been received regarding the request of this vacation of easement. And Ms. Busaka is available to answer any questions that
Any
you may
comments,
have.
Ms. Busaka, going in?
That the staff recommends this.
Karen? Council, any questions of Ms. Busaka? I see none. I'll open the public hearing. Clerk, are there cards on this item?
We have two cards, Mike Cunningham, which said he's here for questions, and then Casey Crouch.
Also just here for questions.
I couldn't hear what he said. but-
Here for questions.
Okay. So you're both here for questions. Any questions for either of those gentlemen?
No.
We have none. I'll close the public hearing. Council, any further discussion? I'll accept the motion on item 9D.
Move to approve easement vacation number 1-2018.
I have a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
And if I could
Any
include resolution number 14, 2018.
fur- Okay.
And resolution number 14-2018. Sorry.
Thank you. Second holds, thank you. Any further discussion? See none. I have a motion. Oh, that was the motion. How did I miss that? I think I'm getting a little punchy about it now. I have the motion in the second. All those in favor, say. Oh, roll call. I wasn't going to do that, and I had it written down there, too.
Member Diesel?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Behringer?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. The next item is item 10A, first reading.
Yes, this is item 10A, first reading, which is small-scale comprehensive plan amendment number 2, 2018, which includes ordinance number 26, 2018, and ordinance number 27, 2018. Ordinance number 26, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending ordinance number 60, 1988, which adopted the comprehensive plan of the City of Titusville by changing the land use designation on an approximately 3.22 acre parcel of property located on the north side of Fox Lake Road, approximately 0.33 miles east of State Road 405, replacing the conservation and medium-density residential future land use boundaries to the conservation and medium-density residential future land use boundaries to match the boundaries of the surveyed wetlands, and providing for an effective date. Ordinance number 27, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending ordinance number 5, 1993 of the City of Titusville, Florida, by amending the zoning map made a part of said ordinance by reference, by replacing the present open space and recreation OR and multifamily medium-density residential R2 zoning boundaries to open space and recreation OR and single-family medium-density R1B zoning boundaries to match the boundaries of the surveyed wetlands on an approximately 3.22 acre parcel of property located on the north side of Fox Lake Road, approximately 0.33 miles east of State Road 405, and providing for an effective date.
This is the first reading. The second reading and public hearing is scheduled for the regular city council meeting on 24 July at 6:30. Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of this action 5-0. Ms. Busaka is here to answer any questions you may have on this, the first reading.
Any comments, Ms. Busaka? Council, any questions for Ms. Busaka? Don't see any. Don't see it. Yes, sir.
We have one card as well, sir.
Okay. Well, go ahead and you make that.
Yeah, it is just, one is I'm very familiar with this area because I live in an adjacent neighborhood to it. And what I believe is that because of the area that it's in, there is a ton of wildlife over there. And the thing that I like is actually this amendment adjusts to allow that wildlife to stay. And I think that it's a big deal. So I just share with you, that is why we would use a single home potentially for that large of a property. I totally get it for the area that it's in, so.
Thank you. That was right up there. Okay, clerk, please call the speaker.
Stan Johnston.
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue. First of all, I'd like to comment on that. It appears to me as maybe you should start my time because you've got a breaking of a rule, and I believe Wanda's supposed to make the attention to it, is that when a council member leaves the chamber, they're supposed to be recognized by the mayor or somebody. So that's one of the rules. I think that should be recognized before I speak. Maybe you're not going to do it.
I gave him a signal.
I didn't see that.
I'm sorry.
Okay, all right, well, he's not here to listen to it. But I noticed recently, as I was talking about, the city has, Water Resources has made millions of dollars of mistakes, and no one batted an eye. Didn't see anybody bat an eye. And this is another mistake. And this what we're looking at, this 10A is another mistake the city has made. It's a big one. Made in 1993. Zonings of properties based upon wetland determination by some kind of a map that's to a scale of like 1 inch to whatever. It was completely very inaccurate. And now I think you should be acknowledge that this is a big mistake. Maybe you won't, but it's ripping off citizens. And we just had this Mike Cunningham and the fellow next to him I'm for this approval of this, by the way. I'm approving this. Is that they took expenses of surveying wetlands and so far and changing their OR designation that was put upon them put upon the property in 1993 by mistake. So I'm asking you to recognize these mistakes, and this is a big one, and it's ripping off citizens. So I'm asking you to approve this, and with the understanding is that this is a big mistake that the city made, and it hurt a lot of people, hurt them big time. And I think you should recognize it and be careful what's going on, the decisions that you make. So I'm here to receive any questions on that.
I see none.
Okay, well, then I'll speak some more. Is that
your time is up, sir.
It's
Actually reset it, so he has another minute left.
Oh, okay. We're resetting. Go ahead, please.
All right, so I'm asking you to please consider this, that this is a big mistake, and and you can make the same big mistakes. This was a recommendation made to council years ago, and it was a bad one, and it hurt a lot of people. And I remember in the last one, when this last one came up, you're going to have another more of these come up because people are spending a lot of money on surveying the wetlands and changing the zoning that was unfairly put upon their property. And by the way, and when you go on OR zoning, that takes it so that there is no property, there is no residence is allowed to be built on there unless by a conditional use permit. So it's a bad thing. I mean, taking property. Thank you.
Good timing. This is first reading, so no vote is necessary. Next item is item 10C.
10B.
10B.
Okay,
That's
10B.
10B, a small-scale
So we just did-
comprehensive plan amendment number 3, 2018, which includes ordinance number 28, 2018, and ordinance number 29, 2018. Ordinance number 28, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending ordinance number 60, 1988, which adopted the comprehensive plan of the City of Titusville, by changing the land use designation on approximately 2.62 acres of property located at 3350 Fox Lake Road, replacing the conservation and medium-density residential future land use boundaries to the conservation and residential 1 future land use boundaries to match the boundaries of the surveyed wetlands and providing for an effective date. Ordinance number 29, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending ordinance number 5, 1993 of the City of Titusville, Florida, by amending the zoning map made a part of said ordinance by reference, by replacing the present open space and recreation OR and multifamily medium-density residential R2 zoning boundaries to open space and recreation OR and residential estate RE zoning boundaries to match the boundaries of the surveyed wetlands on approximately 2.62 acres of property located at 3350 Fox Lake Road, providing for an effective date.
This is the first reading. The second reading and public hearing is scheduled for the regular council meeting on 24 July at 6:30 p.m. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval as action 5-0. And again, this is your first reading. Ms. Busaka is available to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Ms. Busaka? I see none. Clerk, are there any cards on this?
Yes, sir. Mr. Stan Johnston.
Please call him up. Here he comes.
Stan Johnston, 860 Poinsett Avenue. This is very similar to the last one, agenda item, and I'm also very much approve this. This has to do with, again, the same thing, rezoning of property to OR by some kind of a very crude survey, and that people are now having to spend a lot of money to correct the mistake that was made in 1993. And I remember the last time, one of the previous ones was when Mr. Cunningham and his client we requested in writing a waiving of fees. And it was what I would say is received from council members here. It was a slap in the face. It said, Mr. Johnson said something to the effect is, well, we wouldn't want to give you that because we'd have to do it for everybody else. In other words, waiving of this fee. And it's an expensive process. So what I'm sharing with you is I think that it is worthwhile if you would consider waiving the fees in these instances in which the city has made a mistake, and it was a horrible mistake. And these people are being ripped off. So in consideration of that, I would like you not only approve this, but also consider waiving of the fees in all these particular matters in which the errors in rezoning to OR was by mistake of the city. So I think you ought to consider that. And I think that when I talk to you about millions of dollars of mistakes by other cities, I think you should consider that also. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Wait a second, sir. You have a question?
Thank you. And it's just staff. I would take a follow-up, not at this point in time, but just as this continues to move forward, it would be helpful, and it might just be one-on-one, but what percentage of properties that we're talking about? Because the goal is to protect the wetlands, but technology changes through time. So if there is a methodology to be applied, that there may be a better process that doesn't, because technology has evolved, our policy has evolved, but meeting that end costing X amount of dollars every time, I'd like to take a look at that. And I just think that we're going to come across wetlands potential development more independent of this issue, but as a standalone issue.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the first.
Can I fill out a card and say something on that, if you don't mind?
Did you fill out a card, sir?
No, sir, I didn't, but I will fill one out if that's possible. I wasn't planning on saying anything.
Okay.
This isn't
You do have to
responsive.
fill out a card after you speak. We'll let you come up and speak, but try not to do that because.
Thank you, I'm sorry. I wasn't planning on speaking, but yeah, just in reference to that, because that is my piece of property, and I bought that piece of property about 3.5 years ago without the understanding that it was zoned OR and only a portion of my property. So I've been going through hoops for 3 years now, trying to make improvements to the property and everything else, and I've applied for variances, but because of ordinances, couldn't even apply for a variance. So it's a stressful and situation. I mean, it's been a big process, and it has been a lot of expense. I mean, getting environmental specialists to come out and do surveys, then having to pay the state to come out and verify the surveys, then going through and it's just a long process. We've been trying to make improvements for 3 years now, and we're finally getting to this process. So it's the only thing I wanted to say, that it is frustrating. So that might be something to look into, especially in that general area. I mean, there are wetlands out there, there's no doubt. But I got a big pond in my yard, and I wasn't the original builder. I'm up on a mountain now, but I was zoned OR because, I mean, my property is high and dry, more so than everybody around me. So it is a frustrating proposition. So I just wanted to make that known. So thank you much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? I don't see any. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Please pass that in to the clerk, that card. No other cards, clerk? Okay, this is the first reading, so no vote is necessary. Go to the next item, C.
Next item is 10C, ordinance number 30, 2018, to amend the Code of Ordinances for water and sewer building for water-cooled air conditioning. An ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 21 Utilities, Article 4 Water and Sewer Rates and Charges and Billing Procedure, specifically amending Section 21, 241, 3F, Schedule of Water and Sewer Charges, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
This is the first reading. The second reading and public hearing is scheduled for the regular city council meeting on July 24th at 6:30 p.m. And Ms. Pisaka is available to yell out any answers to the questions that you may have. Oh, you're right, it isn't. Sean's, I'm sorry.
Any questions of staff? And there are none. Okay. Clerk, are any cards on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, this first reading requires no vote. So we'll go to item D.
Item D is ordinance number 31, 2018, which is amending the scope and membership criteria for the Titusville Environmental Commission. An ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 31, Article 9, Titusville Environmental Water Resources Commission, by amending Section 31, 121, Powers and Duties, to include issues of environmental sustainability, and by amending Section 31, 122, Appointment and Terms of Office, to amend selection criteria for appointment of members, providing for severability, incorporation into the code, and providing for an effective date.
This is the first reading. The second reading and public hearing is scheduled for the regular city council meeting on July 24th at 6:30 p.m.
All right. Say again? Yes, go ahead.
Was it just, will the TEC be able to have review of this with recommendations prior to us voting? My hope would be that we potentially kick it, and we could kick it to them so that they have a moment to review it and then bring it back.
The TEC meeting is tomorrow evening, so we can certainly ask them to do that.
I would.
It won't be a formal public hearing because it's not advertised for that, but we could ask for their input.
For discussion or availability. Thank you.
Okay, are there any cards on this item, clerk?
No, sir.
This, again, is a first reading, so there is no vote necessary. Item E.
Item E is ordinance number 32, 2018, relating to the location of accessory structures on deep lots in residential zoning districts. Ordinance number 32, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 28 zoning, Section 28-391, residential accessory buildings and structures, to amend location requirements for accessory buildings and structures, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
This is the first first reading. The second reading and public hearing is scheduled for the regular city council meeting on July 24th, 2018 at 6:30.
All right. Any questions of staff and council? Clerk, are there any cards on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll go to the next item. There's no vote. First reading. Item F.
Next item is F, ordinance number 33, 2018, relating to fences and corner lots. An ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances relating to fence placement and materials by amending Chapter 30, Development Options, Article 3, Improvements, Division 1, Subdivision, Lot and Block, Section 30, 139, Corner Lots, by clarifying front setbacks, by amending Article 3, Division 4, Fences, Walls, Section 30, 181, General Provisions, and Section 30, 182, Height and Location Requirements, amending Section 37.1, Definitions, to amend the definition of corner lot and adding the definition of visibility triangle, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
This is the first reading. The second reading and public hearing is scheduled for the regular city council meeting on July 24th at 6:30 p.m.
Okay, any questions of staff? Clerk, are there any cards on this item?
No, sir.
We can go to the next item, item G.
Item G is ordinance number 34, 2018, relating to manufactured homes and manufactured home parks. An ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances relating to residential manufactured homes to comply with the Florida Building Code and reinstating manufactured home open space standards, specifically amending Section 656, construction permit required, inspection approval prior to use or occupancy, and Section 28309, residential manufactured housing park RMH2, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the land development regulations.
This is the first reading. The second reading and public hearing is scheduled for the regular city council meeting on July 24th, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. The Planning and Zoning Commission will consider this ordinance at its meeting on 18 July 2018.
Council, any questions of staff at this point? Clerk, any cards on this item?
No, sir.
No vote is necessary. We go to old business. There is no old business. We go to new business. Code Board Attorney Selection Process.
The Municipal Code Enforcement Board requests that the City Council establish the composition of the Selection and Interview Committee for the replacement of the Code Enforcement Board Attorney prior to the appointment of this position by City Council, which committee is requested to include the following members: a representative from the City Attorney's Office, a current Board Attorney, Richard Rogers, one member of the board, preferably the chairman or vice chairman, to evaluate the attorney's proposals received by the city. Interview shortlist candidates and select the candidate that will be recommended to City Council for contract award. The Code Board request is provided in your packet. And staff recommendation is that you discuss the process to select the Code Enforcement Board attorney. Consider the Code Enforcement Board's request to specifically identify the member of the selection committee to include a representative of the City Attorney's Office, the current board attorney, Richard Rogers, and a member of the board, preferably the chairperson or vice chair.
Council, what's your pleasure?
I agree with the composition of the selection committee. I believe Pat Bell is the chairperson. So her, somebody from the city attorney's office, and Rick Rogers. I mean, Rick has experience and he knows what they need to know. And I'm assuming somebody from the city attorney's office would also know that. I will say that when I read the package that we were asking from the attorneys, I sort of went, are we talking to an attorney or are we talking to a contractor here? And I'm sure that was cut and paste, but it should work.
Yeah, we've received a handful of applications.
Good.
Good. Do we need to name which person from the attorney's office, or we need to?
Just a representative from my office.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if the city manager has any interest in having a designee.
It wouldn't be a bad idea to allow the code enforcement manager to be part of the selection committee as well, if council would choose to do that.
Say that once more, I'm sorry.
The code enforcement manager, Glenn Tullison, potentially would be a good candidate to also sit on this board. To sit on the selection committee, yes, sir.
Yes. Anybody want to make that part of it?
I would, yeah.
I would not want to make that part of it, and this is the reason why. We're looking for somebody who's going to be fair and discussing the issues with the board. And to me, Glenn has one set of one agenda, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but he has an agenda, just like, well, let's have a group of prosecutors pick out the next judge. You know, it needs to be somewhat balanced. So I would rather leave him off, and I don't mean anything bad about him. I don't mean anything against him, but I trust our city attorney, Pat, and Rick to do that job and do it fairly. And that's what we're looking for.
Anybody feel differently on that?
I'm not sure yet. City attorney, excuse me, city manager, say that again. Who would you like, what did you just say?
Mr. Glenn Tollison, who gave you a briefing on code enforcement at your CRA meeting, as you recall, last meeting.
Right, okay.
Glenn is our code enforcement manager for the city.
Yeah, I can see where that would be beneficial to have the guy who's got the most stake in it, but I can also see your point. I would probably agree with Member Nelson that I feel like this is a solid representative board with ownership all the way around. Again, I too can see the value of having Glenn in there, but I also see the value of maybe having him step back and let the other people. So I would leave it as it is.
I think Glenn is a great guy and does a great job, but I respect your opinion on this, and I know where you're coming from, and that is not even, he could do that not even consciously, but just because his job takes one part. And so I understand what you're saying. Any discussion on that?
I just think I just believe it's more, maybe a bit more of a check and a balance by not having him.
Okay. What other items do we have to add to that?
What I was saying with my button was that and actually Member Nelson just beat me to the punch. I like the representation there. I think there's a lot of ownership there and a lot of checks and balances as stated. I like it.
Okay. City Manager, is there anything else we need to add to that?
No, sir. It's
okay. I have a motion then.
Is that my job?
That's your job.
That's my job.
Yeah, we got to give her a break once in a while.
Yeah, really, guys.
Do this one though, because.
Do this one.
Yeah.
Move to approve the Code Board Attorney Selection Process and Interview Committee to include the chairperson or vice chairperson of the board, current board attorney Richard Rogers, and a member from the city attorney's office.
Okay, do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Item B.
In response to a citizen request on June 12, 2018, Council approved advisability for staff to provide options that Council might consider to amend the code to permit operations of a plant nursery in the community commercial CC zoning district. Community commercial uses are located primarily along major transportation corridors and offer a wide range of goods and services. Permitted uses within the district currently include general retail, restaurants, personal and professional services, and banks. Agricultural uses such as plant nurseries are frequently intensively uses that could be incompatible due to the potential for outside storage of bulk materials such as mulch, rock, and soil. The use of pesticides and farm equipment are also potential odors. Commercial development is generally held to higher standards because the property owner is inviting the public onto the business. An example, ADA compliant access is required for commercial buildings, but not for single-family residents. Paved parking areas are designed in consideration for safety for the public with adequate spacing for parking, backing up, turning, as well as ADA compliant parking spaces. Sanitary facilities are currently required for commercial uses to ensure that basic health and safety standards are maintained. Life safety issues are reviewed as part of both the building code and the fire code, and reviewed inspections required for business to receive a business tax receipt. Based on the issues outlined above, staff does not recommend establishment of commercial use without meeting current land development regulations, which is option 1 of the 3 options provided to you. However, Council may wish to move forward to allow plant nurseries in community community commercial without a permanent building, on-site sanitary facilities, and other improvements. Staff proposes that a pilot program be established to determine the desirability of this type of development. Option 2 below. The 7-month pilot program is intended to give the applicant 1 month to open the nursery and 6 months to operate the nursery before council can make a determination whether to continue with the pilot program. The third option presented in your packet is not recommended by staff. And Ms. Bisaka is here to answer any question that you may have. Staff's recommendation is that you provide direction to staff regarding amending the code to permit plant nurseries in community commercial CC zoning classifications.
Any questions for Ms. Bisaka? Okay. Again, this is a pilot program, but would allow Mrs. Toomey to proceed with her business, and then at the end of it, we can see how it worked out and make a decision from experience, which I think is a really good idea. So, are there cards on this item?
We have one.
I'd like to put a card in on it.
I was going to say, we have one card, but I believe there's other people that want to speak. Mr. Hill, Joe Hill's put in a card. And then
Sir,
we
you
have
can go up right
cards.
now and put a card in.
Yeah, I'm Joe Hill, was here earlier. I'm in favor of this, and I would, I can understand why you might want to do a pilot program, but what are you doing to this business owner? They're going to come in, they're going to start up a business, they're going to sink money into this, and go for 6 months, you're going to say, pull the rug out from under them. I really don't think that's fair. I think you should go ahead and approve option 1. Just approve it for CC.
Next card, please.
It's going to be Patricia Toomey as soon as she's finished.
Okay, so there were other options on there, so with all kinds of restrictions that I don't understand the restrictions about limiting my product and limiting what I'm allowed to do and how much space I'm allowed to do it in. Is that still standing?
That's still a potential, man.
I'm sorry?
We haven't voted on anything. We haven't discussed it at all from
Uh-huh.
here. We want your input on that, what you like and what you don't like.
Oh, what I would like is, I believe it should just be approved. The pilot program is okay. I don't have a problem with it as long as the restrictions are taken out of it. I don't believe that anybody else has had to deal with the restrictions that are set forth.
In particular, all of them are bad?
Well, the restrictions of limiting my product, I had spoken to Mrs. Busaka.
By limiting your product. define
Right,
that.
so
Define
what I
that.
wanted was prepackaged items, and I'm not even allowed to have prepackaged items. I would never have bulk items as far as a truck coming in and dropping off items like Cypress mulch and sod does. Number one, I'm limited on space. There's no space for that. I'm only, the agreement I have with my landlord is to have 1/4 of that flat land. It's only 1/4 of it. It's not the entire lot. So there is lot limitations to what it is that I would be doing as well.
So where would you put these items?
As far as the
Packaged
prepackaged stuff, I would only, if I had any of it, and right now I'm not even planning on it, if I had any of it, even though I don't want to be limited from having these items, I would have 1 pallet of them at a time. Just like Ace Hardware has 1 pallet of things at a time.
Would you be able to cover that?
Absolutely, sure, with a tarp or
Tarp or
something.
some
Sure,
other thing?
yeah, not a problem.
Okay, what else?
That's it.
Okay. And you have any problem with the time on it?
The time is,
Si-
well, I mean, if I'm stuck with the time limit of seven months, that's fine. But I don't want unintended visitors such as the health department, which doesn't have any.
We have no
problems.
regulation over
Okay.
of the health department. That's
Code
county.
and zoning, Department of Agriculture, which is always more than welcome to come on the property. But, things of that nature, so,
Would you like additional time?
no, I'm good.
Okay. All right. We're trying to let you get into this, and the only way we can do it without changing all the ordinances, and frankly, we're not going to do that. But if you come up with something that works, then we can look at how it's worked and make a decision. And I would be willing to extend that. I don't know if anybody else has a problem with that. To show you that we're trying to cooperate with you, I'd extend it up to a year.
That'd be fantastic.
Okay.
But
Does
after a
everybody agree
year.
with that?
Yes.
What could
So-
happen after a year? What would I be required
We
to
don't
do
know.
after a year?
We don't know. If you have all kinds of problems with people complaining, then it's probably not working. If you don't, then we'll
Well,
look at it.
I'm not interested in being there either if all kinds of people are going to be complaining,
Okay.
honestly.
We agree on something else now.
Sure. Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, can I ask you a question? It's really not real specific, but just, it looks to me like, and we've talked a little bit in the past, recently, looking at the steps and, and the requirements, you sound like you're okay with it.
Yes.
And Mayor's proposed going a year, and I would think that what you do is you look at the fact that, if there's going to be a little issue here or there, it won't be something, I'm sure, that we wait a whole year to get straightened out. I think that you could plan on, let's make this work. Let's look at this is going to be okay.
Right, but the way it's written in there with if there's a, as in one problem, everything is to cease and desist, and I'm to be off the property within 10 days. And that's kind of aggressive. I don't know of any other business that is under those restrictions and under being hogtied by those exact words. If there is a issue that business is to cease and desist, and I'm to be removed from the property within 10 days.
That goes for almost every pilot program. That's why they're pilot programs. That doesn't mean it's going to happen.
No, I
just
get that,
means
sure.
If it does happen, this is what you got to do.
Okay.
It means we're trying it out, and I think what we'd like to do is anytime I get on an airplane, I'm assuming the pilot's going to be successful in his delivery of me somewhere else. I'm going to assume or presume or hope that after 1 year, we'll be looking at this saying, boy, that was really good. That's the hope, obviously, when you do a pilot program.
Obviously, sure.
So I think that, Mayor's idea of moving it forward to 12 months tells you even more clear what we're
Yes.
trying to do up here. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. She'll have to sit down, sir. She can't. But hang on one second. You want to speak to the? Yeah. Could you come back
I
up,
do,
please?
yeah. So I have two, because what I'm hearing, what I think that I'm hearing, and a possibility to put some of that at ease. So I get the concern of, at the end of it, who knows what happens to it, and as a business, you're trying to invest, and that's shaky for anybody. So I get that. So one is, and then the other one is that, if I do one thing, even unintentionally, that wipe my hands and I'm out, I can't do that. So one, for recourse of if there is something that is considered a violation, no more, no less than any other violation that would take place from another business, are the steps, so as an example, if I'm doing something incorrect, I get cited by somebody, probably code enforcement, and then there is a process to resolve that. Would it be possible to add that process to a portion of this pilot program? I'm just making sure.
What the language says,
Yeah.
is it has to be a finding by the code board.
Right.
So if there is a violation, we say this is what you need to do to come into compliance. If that doesn't happen, then it would go to the code board and they would make a decision.
So if I'm hearing that correctly, so the idea is that no different, and Mayor, I think to what you stated, So that process is, it's not just a wing and you're done. There's opportunity for remediation. There's opportunity to.
But the way it's written in the email is not how it's presented, which is very scary.
Sure, but so I hope that you
No,
feel
that's great.
comfortable with that, knowing
Absolutely.
that that is the case. So that takes care of one, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second was on the end of this, what's to happen. And there's two things I would hope as a council we might consider. So one is, how do we move this, one as a pilot program independent of this specific business? So as a city, what do we do after the findings of this pilot program we might be able to look at relative to code and where we may go with it as a city? The second portion is directly tied to this business. So where I look at as a pilot program, after successful completion, could there be something in that says, and you're allowed to continue in perpetuity upon the completion if you've met all things? The second would be coming back at the end of 7 months or so as a council and independently saying, do we want to look at this as a code adjustment or a zoning adjustment? I think it's two separate issues.
I think you're making it more difficult than it is.
Probably.
Actually, it's in here.
I'm sorry.
It's
Thank
in
you.
here. The program may be extended by a decision of the city council.
Where I'm not saying is, what I'm trying to do is alleviate that decision.
Understood.
Where I'm trying to say is that upon successful completion, that you are granted, go forth and sell stuff.
Well, basically, the agreement says, come back here, and if it's going good and there aren't any problems, then we can turn around and continue the program or modify whatever we need to modify.
Okay.
When we have all the facts, we'll make a better decision, and that's what we want to do, have all the facts. We'll give this lady a year to work at it and see how it works. I'd also add to that, Ms. Busaka, that you add something on the storage or covering of products and so forth, so that, and one of the things you have to be is make sure that's, none of that is, whatever it is, I don't know what you're going to be doing, but it has to be contained from wind and bad weather and so forth.
I understand.
And she's-
Do you want me to explain what it is that I would be selling?
You can if you'd like.
It's easy. It's just plastic bags of amendments, which would be horse manure, cow manure, mushroom compost, these things. They're pre-bagged. They're, harmonically sealed, and they're just, placed one on top of the other in layers, just like any other pallet of product comes.
Okay, but just so it doesn't turn into something that maybe isn't, so if you're able to cover them.
Right.
That would take care of anything that might
I'll
get
even-
unsightly, the bags breaking or whatever.
I'll even allow the city to choose the color if they like.
I like blue. We're used to that around here. Okay, I think we have the basis of an agreement. You're going to get it all in writing so you can look at
Okay.
it. But we're trying very hard to see you through this thing, so.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. It's just that it's been a hard road.
I understand, but I think you understand, you gave us a difficult problem because it's against every rule we have to do with that zoning, but
I really don't want to go back all the way to the beginning.
I don't either, believe me, you're right.
We could go back to the beginning, but let's not.
I don't
Let's
think it
start
would-
from here and let's go forward and let's try and get this in motion as quickly as possible.
I'm in total agreement.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. You have any, wait a minute, we do have a couple more questions. for
All
you.
right.
Member Nelson? No? Okay. Member Diesel?
I just want to thank you, Ms. Busaka, because so many times we call on you, it's because something's, square peg, round hole kind of thing, and you just took a square peg, round hole, and without you, this doesn't happen. So clearly, you've had a lot of quizzes tonight, and I think as you get extra credit for this one, thank you very much, seriously.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
I'll sit down
Do we-
here in case.
Do we need to make a motion on this?
Yes, you need to make a motion.
You have one more card, sir.
Oh, sorry. Your card, sir.
It's Mike Daniels.
I'm Mike Daniels, owner of that property and keep them running. In the past, we've been allowed to have a full-scale nursery there like you had talked about, and where there was stuff everywhere. I wasn't happy with it. And also, we had a fruit stand there that was allowed to come in there where they sold vegetables on that piece of property. You know, it has been very lenient. Whenever Twigs and Berries came in, we came up here and the city had the fence drawn out, the parking lot drawn out for us, said, yeah, we can make this work, here it is. What I'm expecting out of Patty is I'm expecting a very neat place, and I'm not expecting truckloads of manure and stuff coming in, okay? Just a pallet or two of, you know, her to maintain her plants and probably sell some to the public. But I appreciate you guys giving her the chance of doing this. I'm not fully understanding the pilot program. I was kind of expecting a variance or something like that because the property had been used for a full-scale nursery at one time. And I just don't understand what made the change. You know, did that variance go away? Does a variance go away over a period of time? You know, whenever you allow something to be done on a piece of property, or is it just a one-time thing?
You can't get a variance for use, so there wouldn't have been a variance to allow a use.
An exception or something.
I'm not aware of that.
They had allowed it. I don't think all you guys were here whenever we didn't even come up here to do this. Whenever we went right straight to
Maybe that's
downstairs. But
maybe you just answered your own question, sir.
How's that?
You didn't come up and ask.
Well, no, we didn't have to.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm good with it, and we'll move forward. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anybody else want to speak? If not, let's go forth and be successful.
Excuse me, I have a couple of questions. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah.
We talk about a permanent building not being required, and we will delete the part about the outdoor storage of packaged materials. We'll amend that to allow that covered. What about the stabilized parking? Is that going to be required?
It is required. I mean, they have parking, I assume. So, can they jointly use that parking?
I'm asking.
That's okay with me.
Okay, so there will be no requirement for stabilized parking. Is that correct?
There is a requirement that they join with.
Well, so there's no stabilized parking on site. Are you saying that the parking can be used with permission of the owner?
Basically, is that, everybody go with that? The crossover parking.
The next issue is, we currently have a stormwater requirement that if there's any impervious surface over 1,000 square feet, that would, stormwater would be required. But you're saying because there's no stabilized parking, we don't have to worry about that.
Right.
What about the dimensionalized sketch to depict the display areas, ingress and egress, temporary structures on site?
Can you give us that? Just, it doesn't have to be an artist drawing or a mechanical
This doesn't
drawing.
have to be, a dimension sketch does not mean an engineering plan.
Yes, sir. I will give it to you tomorrow.
No, you don't.
I will have it here tomorrow.
Okay, and you understand we still have to amend the
please.
code. So we still have some processes to go through. I just want to make sure. What about the lighting not provided on site? Hours of operation will be from dawn to dusk.
No, we're good.
We have no choice about the ADA requirements. Those are federal.
But she shouldn't have.
But
You don't have any
that
stairs.
requires a building, and
Yeah, you don't
there's
have
no
any
ingress
stairs
or
or
egress
anything.
into a building.
The next thing is we've said that there would be requirement for sanitary facilities would be available during the hours of operation as provided for in a written agreement.
He has.
Which means
I'm not
that-
speaking for you, sir, but as I understand, you've made an agreement?
Okay. The next thing is that the agreement, when the agreement is terminated, that the approval of the plant nursery shall become null and void.
Say that again.
If the agreement to utilize the facilities are terminated, then this becomes null and void. Is that correct? All right. The next thing is that one temporary sign may be permitted. And finally, we are going to make the pilot program effective for 1 year.
Right.
Thank you.
Everything
Right.
okay?
I'm great.
Me too.
And so council understands this will come back to you in the form of an ordinance. So there will be a public hearing. Staff will put all these conditions into an ordinance and we'll bring back to you for consideration.
Okay.
And do we know when that might be?
I don't, but they do. When might that be?
It takes we have to do advertising, so we just can't do this for the next meeting. We might be able to get first reading on the meeting in August, but I have to check the advertising requirements.
That work? It's,
No, that's great. Just communication is key.
sure. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, petitions and requests from the public present. Anybody have anything else they'd like to discuss this evening? That has something to do with the city preferably? Okay. Mayor and council reports. You have my written report. Any council that has any reports to make? Yes, sir.
First of all, I want to thank City Manager and Edie McCall and Ms. Busaka for meeting with me in my efforts to kind of get an idea of what we do to recruit restaurants, because that's certainly something I've heard over and over and over. I think I got a very thorough understanding, and a great effort is being taken place every day. I'll just put it at that. I wanted to say that I guess this last weekend, the National Special Olympics were held in Seattle, Washington, and the Brevard County team in softball, which my nephew Chris Oliver is on, won the national championship in softball, excuse me, at the Special Olympics in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
And I knew it was a big deal when the Space Coast Daily was covering their arrival at Rockledge. I guess it was McClarty Park there, and the police escorted them in, et cetera. Really? I believe there is about 4 or 5 Titusville residents on that team, and I would like to perhaps have a recognition if I could put that together. Yeah, I've talked to the city manager about that. So I just kind of wanted to give give a little tip of the hat. I think it's going to be 4 or 5. I certainly think our Titusville residents winning a national championship. And in reality, they had the same Special Olympics 2 years ago, and they won the national championship then. So they're back-to-back softball champions. And another concern I wanted to at least get out there, it's been bothering me, and I should have said it long ago, and by coincidence, and Member Nelson can attest to this, we had a Rotary meeting this morning, and someone was in there speaking to us about school-age hunger. But while he was saying that, he talked about how the rents are so high in Titusville now and in the area. I had talked to the city manager about that concern. I don't say I have an answer. I think we all spoke to Community of Hope, and I had never heard of a program before that was more about rental properties and putting people up than like Habitat for Humanity. I hadn't heard of a rental program. And I can tell you, my youngest son was just looking for a rental not long ago. And as time went by, I live in Imperial Estates, which is not a up-level neighborhood. It's a great neighborhood, Imperial Estates. I love it out there. I love it there.
You have neighbors.
But I live in the house I grew up in. It was built in 1965. A house just like mine around the block 2 years ago was $750. And then somebody rented it and moved out. It's now $1,250 to rent about a 900 square foot home, as we were talking about that. That's a real concern to me. I don't have really any answers except what these folks have for us, but I just wanted to get the awareness out there that in concrete stuff, $750 2 years ago, and now it's going for $1,250. I live in the same kind of house, and I can tell you that the mortgage isn't that high. So that's a concern I think we have in our community, and I know I spoke with city manager, and certainly we're aware of that. And
can I comment on that?
Certainly, certainly.
Well, typically when that happens, and it has happened all over. I mean, no particular. The marketplace, the free enterprise system, will take care of it because there are higher prices and profits to be made. Admittedly, I'm surprised that it's taken so long, but we do have a lot of homes coming in. We do have the one on Mount McRae.
Right, right.
Yeah. I don't know if you've been in there. I went there for the ribbon cutting. It's a great looking place. I don't know what the prices are in there. They weren't, I was surprised they were so low, frankly, with what they were offering. I mean, it's all certainly a balance, but I think, you know, as these things are going on, I think the marketplace, the builders will start to get the idea that, well, we need some multifamily and it'll happen.
Well, I agree. You know, the tiny house or whatever they're calling those, that little discussion today is another one of those. City manager reminded me that over by Heroes, there's some more apartments coming in. So I'm really proud that we seem to be moving. But in the concrete sort of form in my own neighborhood, when my own son was trying to get into a rental, and fortunately for him, he was able to buy a house, and it seems almost cheaper now or more affordable now to buy a house than to go first,
when you do
last,
like
and damage deposit. So in 2016, the average rent in Titusville was $868. I don't know what it is now, but if it was $868 in 16, it's probably over $1,000 average. So that being said, I guess I want to end again with saying congratulations to the Special Olympics softball team from Brevard County that won the national championship, and I hope to see them here soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And I'm going to piggyback on Member Diesel a little bit because I might have some information for that. Last night at the League of Cities meeting, we had Ian Golden from Brevard County Housing and Human Services, and he spoke to the multitude of services that they provide, but he did highlight the issue of housing. So currently in Brevard County, if you look at the county as a whole, so it's not Titusville, but just as a benchmark, $1,500 right now is average rent. And so to put that in perspective, if you use the model of 30% of your income, no more than 30% of your income should be applied to rent, that takes you to $60,000 a year. That's the salary you have to have in order to meet that rent threshold. So to put it in perspective, and it's fair to say that we have plenty of people in our community that don't, but just in Brevard, that as a household aren't even coming close to that. And so for scope of issue, I would share with you that's a benchmark probably to be used. But as far as solution, so one of the things that is going to be taking place is that FEMA is kicking a $1.2 billion funding into Florida due to hurricane damages or so forth and so on. 80% of that is going to a single county, and the methodology was fine. 80% is to go to the most devastated area. So then it becomes a fight over that 20%, right? So how does that other 20 get split up between Florida? I would share with you that he is, I think, going to be pursuing a portion of that 20% very, very aggressively. And one of the ways that he said that cities could help with that is leveraging through partnership. And so just to know that they are working and they are looking for partners, because he noted that FEMA, in short, is primarily looking for one fiduciary to distribute those dollars to the local effort. So as an example, Brevard County becomes the fiduciary of those funds, and then through partnership. So just making sure that we're prepared for that partnership in the ways that Brevard County is seeking those funds on those issues, of which I think housing is one, may be something that we might be able to do as a city and help with the housing issue. So that was one. The second thing, and this would be, I would hope that you would consider this an actionable item, sir, is that I believe I should step down from the Space Coast League of Cities. And I think that I should do that very soon, like now. And here's why. Because in November, I'm going to go home and no longer be on council and go play with my kids a little bit. But the work to be done at the League of Cities, I believe this year is critical because whatever challenges we've had to home rule in the past 2-year period, this past year was dismal for the state's efforts for home efforts and home rule. I think is only going to be exacerbated in this upcoming year. I think the fight is in Tallahassee, and the League of Cities is adopting their priorities through the Florida League of Cities convention that they have once a year, and that is in August. And so my suggestion would be that we appoint a new representative to the Space Coast League of Cities.
I'm going to ask you to hold off until we have the full council here.
Sure, understandable. Absolutely, the time, and the only reason I'm going is for time sensitive. The conference is at the end of August. So my hope would be that whatever member would choose to do that would be able to, most importantly, attend. When you need to go to Tallahassee, you're available to do so, because the fight is most likely not going to be in Brevard County. It's going to take a lot of effort in this upcoming year. And so just as a member, I know that I don't have that time for the next 2 months, and therefore my hope would be to get somebody vested into it now and get the ball rolling. So that would be where I'm at. But I'm happy to bring that to the next council meeting.
Bring it up to the next council.
Yeah, okay. And that was all I had.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Anyone else have anything? If not, we have the city manager's report, and he has some.
Yes, sir,
great
Vice Mayor, I
news.
think we can help you out a little bit with my first action item. Staff has received a letter from the Florida League of Cities requesting each member city nominate one official to serve as its voting delegate at the annual Florida League of Cities conference to be held at the Diplomatic Beach Resort in Hollywood, Florida, between 16 and 18 August. This letter and designation form is included in your packet. Staff is recommending council select one member to serve as the city's representative at this conference. So that would be the conference I believe that you want a delegate to go to.
Correct.
So I've got to get it in. It is kind of time sensitive.
Well, she already addressed it, right?
Sir?
Did Member Stokel address this issue?
Member Stokel had suggested that she attend this, yes.
That would be August what?
August 16 through 18.
If she already has, I mean.
Well, she's asking for you
be-
guys
yeah.
to make her the delegate.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Speak her name.
Oh, okay. I vote that we send Sarah Stokel.
I would just second with discussion.
Yes, sir.
And my only one is that I have full faith and confidence in Member Stokel to carry out those duties. But my hope would be that the consideration of the additional subsequent duties that I would expect to follow up as far as this upcoming year, that the time that's going to be needed to do that is available.
That decision is hers.
Yeah, and totally agree with that. So just making sure that we're making that. So I'm happy to continue the second, but okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I was just going to say, that may be something that when she's here, we need to discuss. Obviously she's working. She needs to understand exactly how much time it's going to take.
Can I have a
Okay, we have a
question?
motion and a second.
Let me
Or
ask you.
discussion.
Yeah, discussion, or question, really. Are we making a motion that she represent at this conference, or that she take over?
We're just making a motion for the commission.
Okay.
She has spoken to that issue. She didn't speak to the other one. Okay. Anything else on that? Okay, all those in favor, say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously.
Yes, sir. 2 information items for council's consideration. We've got the fixed asset disposal results, and I'd like to again announce that Titusville has been named the state's second trail town, and that was a tremendous effort by staff, and we appreciate council's and the CRA's support in helping to transform our town into a walkable, multimodal city that we all know it can be. We have access to certain grants now. The application involved going to Tallahassee with staff and a presentation. They had evaluators come take a look at our city. The packet itself was a very thick packet that involved a lot of information. I applaud staff's effort as well as the merchants that they interviewed. So they actually interviewed merchants here to find out. The question went something like this: do you know what a trail town is? And the majority of them did.
Oh, that's great.
So
that is
very,
great to hear.
Yes,
Believe
sir.
me, I could tell you tales from years ago.
Yes, sir.
That would-
So congratulations, City of Titusville. We beat out 7 cities this time around.
I think that's fabulous. I'm really impressed, and we're in case you haven't heard or seen it, that we're just an infant starting in this, but there's about 1,000 people a month that have averaged to this point, which I think is a good harbinger of what's going to come in the future. So, and I think we have to applaud to a great degree on this, not only the rest of city staff, but the city manager, because he did a yeoman's job on getting this together and convincing us all that was there. And believe me, I had no idea of it until he took me over to Winter Garden, and that's the other city, the other.
No, it's actually DeLand.
Oh, is it?
Winter Garden is applied and not been accepted.
They didn't get accepted. Boy, are we doing something right, sir? I'm sorry about that, because I would think they would have been accepted. I was very impressed with Winter Garden, and I hope they make it in the future, certainly.
Sure.
But we know the effort you put into it, and we certainly appreciate it very much.
Yes, sir. I'll pass that along to staff, because I'm really proud of their results. And I'd like to also add, you'd said that we have averaging 1,000 visitors in the visitor center every month. We finally got our Hawaii visitors, so.
So we get all the states.
Proud to report that we now have all 50 states
How about that?
represented going through our visitor center in some regard. So that's
And Puerto
awesome.
Rico.
And then we're still going to work on the overseas element, but there's certain ones I don't think we'll ever get. I just want to remind council of some upcoming very important meetings that are not normally scheduled. We have scheduled the City Code Height Restriction Workshop for August 7, 2018 at 5:30 right here. And the purpose of this workshop is to discuss vertical height restrictions and to see where we need to go in the future to assist us in development. And then we have handed out your budget book, which this is now will be published on our website tomorrow morning, actually. And it contains our proposed budget to council. We will have a tentative millage set at the end of July with 2 public workshop and then 2 public hearings in September for your approval of the FY19 budget. And subject to questions, that completes my report.
Any questions for the city manager? Mr. City Attorney, any report? All right, thank you. With that, I think we have completed, unless anybody from the audience would like to make any comments? No? Just here for the visit? All right. We have completed our mission here, so I declare this meeting adjourned.